Okay. The wiring is a bit messed up here. I apologize about that. Alright, so hopefully I have the right screen and everything. I did not know that I did not have the right screen on. And this is stupid Streamlabs. I apologize about that. And that's just is what it is and everything. So it's supposed to go seamlessly. There's some stuff I'm still learning about this. So let me get this. I want to make sure that. All right, got that. Everything is going here. All right, cool. All right. Let's see here. All right. Just making sure everything is working here. All right. All right. All right. So this is PBD podcast, and really ran afoul last time. I had the right screen on. My stupid. Dumbass on that part. Everything. So I want to get back here. This is Elizondo. This is from the PBD podcast and everything. Hope everyone's doing well and have a great night. If there's any problems, let me know. I need to know. So, anyways, let's go back over some of this again.
There's a larger umbrella called OSAP, and then there was some evolution over time where the focus went from OSAP to really kind of more pinpoint focused, which was ATIP.
Yeah.
At the time I was working over by the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, which is somewhat close to CIA's headquarters, but the commute was killing me. And we raised our two daughters and our family on a little island called Kent Island in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay because I didn't want to raise them in a big urban area like D.C., so my commute was 3 hours each way. Sometimes it was not uncommon for me to spend more time in the car than I was at the office. So in 2008...
Again, everyone has their opinions about those Elizondo, stuff like that and everything. So, anyways...
I was asked to come back to the Pentagon and start a program to help integrate national-level intelligence with local law enforcement. After 9/11, we realized that we, as a national security apparatus, we weren't sharing threat-related information very well with local law enforcement. So my job was to fix that.
Okay.
And it was shortly thereafter that some people visited me in my office.
I think it might have been the cord also. I didn't know if I had the cord over this mic and everything. So I think that also did some of it with the echo. Interference with the mic and everything. So glad I got that.
Office.
Hopefully.
And after several meetings, asked me to be part of their organization. Now, what that organization was at the time, I had no idea. But they were cleared. They had the blue IC badge like I had, and they had all the clearances. And finally, one day I met their boss, and that's when I learned about the U.S. government's UFO investigation. And by the way, we weren't the only show in town. There was a long history of the U.S. government being involved in investigating. We call them now UAP, but in the vernacular, it's UFOs.
I call UFO.
Now, at the time, is that a publicly known organization, or it's underground that no one knows about?
It was not publicly known at all.
So you're talking about the the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Is that the one?
Correct, ATIP. And in fact, there was a larger umbrella called OSAP, and then there was some evolution over time where the focus went from OSAP to really kind of more pinpoint focused, which was ATIP. So ATIP was looking pretty much at the nuts and bolts of UAP interactions with U.S. government assets. So think of military aircraft, military installations, other type of research centers that belong to the U.S. government, and how UAP were interacting in and around those areas.
Okay, so is this the one that Harry Reid raised $22 million to start? This is the one?
That's correct. That's correct.
So what prompted him to want to do this? Like, normally somebody doesn't just wake up and say, guys, we have to start this thing and I want to start recruiting certain people. Let's go raise $22 million to investigate what? What prompted his motive?
Right. So it wasn't just Harry Reid. A lot of people think this was some sort of wild goose chase by Senator Harry Reid. It wasn't. This was a bipartisan effort. It was also Senator Ted Stevens and from Alaska, who was Republican, and Senator Inouye into military intelligence and did some support.
We can figure that out, Luis, with you, and not a big deal. We just want to know what's going on with these aliens and UAPs, and you've been all over the place the last few years. Every time you turn it on, you're on CNN.
This guy, let me tell you, this guy was not a plumber, thank God. I mean, last night, okay, that guy sounded like, last night, that video, he sounded like somebody that just knew a lot of stuff, knew about secret stories, about what was going on in Antarctica. And then he said, oh, I worked there and stuff like that. Oh, I'm not held to any classified, national security stuff where I can't talk about stuff. I can talk about anything. And he sounds like one of those guys that just says, that just puts all this stuff. It's like me saying, I worked at Area 51, or I was at these underground bases. I worked in intelligence. And I can talk about anything, and I just put a bunch of stories together, which would be false. But, I mean, I know about stuff. The thing is, I was never in the military. I was never in intelligence. I've been around that stuff from other people and everything. I mean, there's a big difference. And that guy, seriously serious red flags, and everything. So, I got some stuff in my mouth for my nose, so if I have to stop for a minute, I may have to do that and get it out. He's about to say...
And you're on Fox, you're on this, you're on News Nation, you're on Rogan recently, you're all over the place. So we have a simple mission. That's what the mission is. You got a book that just came out, Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs, Eminent. And for the audience that doesn't know you, first of all, I appreciate you for coming out and spending some time together.
Oh, my privilege. Thank you.
I have consumed so much of your content that I feel like I know you at this point from watching these interviews.
I'm so sorry.
But for the audience that doesn't know you, if you don't mind taking a minute or two and just kind of give your background, how you went about, and then what all of a sudden in 2008 when you got that call, walk us through that.
Yeah, sure. So long story short, I grew up as a blue-collar kid in South Florida. After high school, I attended the University of Miami. I studied microbiology, immunology, and parasitology, not parapsychology, the study of parasites, so microorganisms. And after that, I joined the Army and went into military intelligence and did some support to special operations. And from there, I was recruited into a very specialized program within the government. It was a civilian program that's still basically like a civilian soldier, where I was a special agent and basically focused on national security crimes, so terrorism, espionage, things like that. Spent early part of my years in Latin America doing counterinsurgencies and counter-narcotics and things like that, and supporting some other three-letter agencies down there, counter-guerrilla operations. And then after 9/11, found myself over on the other side of the globe. Focused a lot of my efforts in places like Afghanistan and the Middle East, this time focusing on things like Hezbollah and other organizations, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and things like that.
How much experience do you have with them, with Hezbollah, with Al-Qaeda? How much interaction experience, like close up.
That was our job. We recruited sources. We were, using them as spies.
Okay, we'll come back to that. We'll
Sure.
come back. That's good to know.
Like I said in the last video and everything, we do have people, including Mossad and stuff like that. We could find out stuff probably about how badly those nuclear sites were hit as well, because there are people on payroll, there are spies and stuff.
So then probably after 4 or 5 of these trips over there, my wife finally said, look, I'm concerned you're not going to come back. You're really rolling the dice here, and you're taking a lot of chances. And so I came back, took a supervisory position, started running investigations back in Washington, D.C., and from there spent some time with other 3-letter agencies and the Director of National Intelligence. And in 2008, I was asked to come back to the Pentagon. At the time, I was working over by the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, which is somewhat close to CIA's headquarters. But the commute was kept.
Yeah, like you said, some people believe that he is a plan and stuff. And this is one of the things where I don't so much care so much, because I know about some of this stuff myself, my own experiences and everything, that everybody has their opinions about him. There are people that do call him a plant, and there are people, I think we just, there's stuff, from my own father and other people that I know of. Each whistleblower could be different about what you can and can't talk about. Yeah, he is type A. Yeah, definitely type A.
Killing me. And we raised our 2 daughters and our family on a little island called Kent Island in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay, because I didn't want to raise them in a big urban area like D.C. So my commute was 3 hours each way. Sometimes it was not uncommon for me to spend more time in the car than I was at the office. So in 2008, I was asked to come back to the Pentagon and start a program to help integrate national level intelligence, with local law enforcement. After 9/11, we realized that we, as a national security apparatus, we weren't sharing threat-related information very well with local law enforcement. So my job was to fix that. And it was shortly thereafter.
Honestly, he's a lot more credible than Mario or Luigi the plumber. I think we could all agree that he's a lot more credible than
that some people visited me in my office, and after several meetings, asked me to be part of their organization. Now, what that organization was at the time, I had no idea. But they were cleared. They had the blue IC badge like I had, and they had all the clearances. And finally, one day I met their boss, and that's when I learned about the U.S. government's UFO investigation. And by the way, we weren't the only show in town. There was a long history of the U.S. government being involved in investigating. We call them now UAP, but in the vernacular, it's UFOs.
Now, at the time, is that a public?
I have to, again, legal reasons, copyright and everything else as well. Shout out to PBD Podcasts for making this possible and everything. So I need to put that out there as well each time for obvious reasons. Give them cred and everything else and everything. So shout out again to PBD Podcasts and everything.
Known organization, or it's underground that no one knows about?
It was not publicly known at all.
So you're talking about the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program? Is that the one?
Correct, ATIP. And in fact, there was a larger umbrella called OSAP, and then there was some evolution over time where the focus went from OSAP to really kind of more pinpoint focused, which was ATIP. So ATIP was looking pretty much at the nuts and bolts of UAP interactions with U.S. government assets. So think of military aircraft, military installations, other type of research centers that belong to the U.S. government, and how UAP were interacting in and around those areas.
Okay, so is this the one that Harry Reid raised $22 million to start? This is the one?
That's correct. That's correct.
So what prompted him to want to do this? Like, normally somebody doesn't just wake up and say, guys, we have to start this thing and I want to start recruiting certain people. Let's go raise $22 million to investigate what? What prompted his motive?
Right. So it wasn't just Harry Reid. A lot of people think this was some sort of wild goose chase by Senator Harry Reid. It wasn't. This was a bipartisan effort. It was also Senator Ted Stevens and from Alaska, who was Republican, and Senator Inouye from Hawaii. And then top of that, you had also John Glenn as well, former astronaut.
That's right, yeah.
And they had their own experiences with UAP. So, for example,
UFOs.
Stevens actually during war had seen a UAP, and also Harry Reid had indicated that he had several, if you will, run-ins with UAP himself when he was younger. And so,
when he got younger.
When he was younger,
You're not talking about the time he got a black eye. That wasn't a UAP. That's a different story.
it probably felt like a UAP crashing
I'm
into
just
him.
trying to make sure we don't want stories to be.
Yeah.
But go ahead. When he was younger.
Yeah, and so there's always been an interest by these individuals in Congress to get to the bottom of this. There was also a report which I heard directly from the former senator, where he was accidentally read onto the program at one point, to the ongoing government's UFO program.
Well, they changed acronyms. Like I said, they always change acronyms, so people cannot always find out when they're investigating UFOs, and that's why they related it to UAP. They did that as a diversion. They tried to rebrand UAP into something else. So I'm an OG at this. I call it UFOs. I just hate it when people use UAP, but that's just me. But
And he was so incensed that when they tried to read him off and say, "Oh, there was a mistake. We shouldn't have told you about this,"
Right.
he got very mad. And this was one of the many reasons why he got involved. There was also several individuals in the Pentagon at the time who were also very concerned about UAP. One of them was actually the original director for OSAP, Dr. James Lukatsky. James Lukatsky was probably, in my opinion anyways, the world's premier rocket scientist. This is an individual who epitomizes what it means to be a rocket scientist for the U.S. government. He could tell you the burn rate of a first-stage solid rocket booster motor. He could tell you the trajectory and reentry velocity of, let's say, a MIRV, multiple reentry vehicle coming in from low Earth orbit. The guy was just a wealth of information.
Skinwalkers at the Pentagon? That's who you're talking about? Okay.
Yeah. And so that's James Lukatsky, and there were several others that were part of this effort. And I can happy to talk to you about them. But
what was Harry Reid's interaction when he was a kid?
I don't know. He never shared that with me.
But he did say that he did have something.
He shared that with me and a couple others. Yeah.
Got it. So their motive is it almost personal? Like, look, I think something's going on. Let's find out. And let's put a program here. Or is it because Harry is in Nevada, right?
Right.
And Area 51 is in Nevada. Now, the other fellow you're talking about is from Hawaii, right? And then Glenn. So it's not like everything is Nevada-based. Did any of his motives of wanting to do this because there was Area 51 in Nevada, or no?
Well, I think that the real impetus was the fact that he was aware there were U.S. military encounters going on with these UAP. There's a real national security issue here, right? You have these vehicles, let's call them vehicles, that have the ability to fly unimpeded, unchallenged into controlled U.S. airspace over sensitive military installations.
Yeah, again, like I said last video, there are some people that says the reports where this at night opens up like a big hangar and stuff like that, and there's like a whole like city type thing that is under this and everything. So, which I've seen stuff as well. So, and then there's S4, and there's Sign of a Mountain, and everything else. So,
and potentially even interfere with our nuclear equities, our nuclear capabilities. So there was a big concern on behalf of the government, both in the intelligence community and the Department of Defense. In some cases, we had almost near air collisions with these things. In fact, if you talk to some of the fighter pilots, they'll relay to you, they'll tell you where some of these vehicles have come so close to a combat formation that they've actually split the air formation right down the middle. So that's close, right? You're talking, what, 15 feet, maybe? So there was a air safety issue as well.
I jokingly call those ET craft juvenile delinquent aliens. I always joke and say that those are juvenile delinquents coming from their star system to start up trouble. And I could imagine making comedies off stuff like that.
And it became almost like the worst kept secret in the Pentagon. It was happening so often, especially with a lot of our nuclear carrier strike.
I can just imagine us pulling some of these ETs over, these UFOs over. You open the thing up, and you see these ET juvenile delinquents, and they're getting arrested for starting stuff on our planet. I'd love to do stuff like that.
Groups that people on the ship were literally using their phones
stuff
to take pictures and videos of these things. So something had to be done. And I think from that perspective, I can't really talk much about the Skinwalker Ranch because my focus was more on the ATIP, the military aspect of this.
That's where people
but there was significant amount of data to suggest
like
that there's something there because it's not just eyewitness testimony.
That's also where tribal nations, stuff like that, and parts of the Southwest, Four Corner states, everything, people see cryptids there, Bigfoot, stuff like that, and other spirit walkers, wolfmen, etc.
Right? It's not like grandma seeing some lights in the backyard. We're talking about trained observers that are trained to recognize a silhouette at 10 miles away and determine, is it an Su-22, is it a MiG-25, is it an F-16, and identify friend or foe. Do I kill it or do I save it? Right? Within a second. This is how good these pilots are, and they're Top Gun trained. Like literally people watch the movie Top Gun. Well, these are the real Top Gun pilots. And not only are they seeing these craft that outperform anything that they have in their inventory, but it's also being further substantiated by gun camera footage and FLIR footage from a pod, forward-looking infrared footage, and oh, by the way, it's also being corroborated by...
Nellis has those red flag because Top Gun school there, so...
radar signature and radar returns from airborne radar, seaborne and ground-based radar systems. So you have this menagerie, if you will, or this collection of sensor capabilities, all reporting the same incident at the same time, at the same location, under the same circumstances, right? So now put that on the backdrop of where I come from, being a former special agent in counterintelligence. If I was providing this information to a jury, for example, we're well beyond reasonable doubt at this point.
Yeah, some people do believe that some ETs could be time travelers, etc. Yeah, so some people do believe that some could be.
I mean, this is the jury would have to convict because the information is so compelling. I mean, these are the same collection sensor systems that we use to prosecute and win wars. And when you see these technologies that are coming into our controlled U.S. airspace, and there's really not a darn thing we can do about it, that's a problem. That's a real national security issue. Forget about tinfoil hats and Elvis on the mothership and all that other nonsense. We're talking a real national security. Imagine if one of these things had a Russian star on the tail or a North Korean tail number, right? It would be on the front page of every newspaper. But because these things didn't even have a tail, no rudder, no wings, no ailerons, no control surfaces, not even a cockpit, it was crickets. Nobody wanted to say anything. So you can think about this from a national security perspective, right? You go to an airport today or to a train station, you always hear over the announcements, if you see something suspicious, say something. And yet, it was the exact opposite for our own men and women in uniform in the military when these things were coming up close and personal to their aircraft or over our facilities. Nobody wanted to say anything. It was crickets. And so I think there was a recognition by the senators at the time that something had to be done. And in fact, it's the same reason now, it's the same impetus why Congress now is involved in this topic, because they're concerned. They've heard.
I think people should keep in mind is that for some people that have had close encounters with these ET craft and stuff like that, that they could get cancer from close encounters and stuff like that. So multiple different instances.
Heard from the whistleblowers. They've heard from the pilots. They have received some of the briefings. It's real. Whatever it is, it's real. That part of the conversation is already over.
So you get recruited to this advanced aerospace threat identification program. 07, 08. I think 07 is when it started. I think you get recruited in 08.
It was actually early part of '09.
Okay, so
I came to the Pentagon in '08, late '08, and it was really right after that on the tail end.
you came to Pentagon, and then they recruited you and assigned you to this. They give you this assignment after recruiting you from the Pentagon. That's kind of how they met you.
Yeah, there was a vetting
Like the
process.
nomination and the vetting process.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that I don't know what their selection criteria was. I've always thought it was because early on in my career I did a lot of advanced aerospace protection technology.
Well, my father had access to nuclear arsenal. How my father got it, you usually have to have that top secret clearance. You have to have that first, usually. And they do psychological vetting on you, how well you get along with others. They want to make sure you don't drink. They want to make sure you don't do drugs and stuff. And they want to make sure that you have a solid marriage and that you're not a playboy or a playgirl or whatever, depending on how long or whatever, right? So they go through a good psychological, and you can't have any crime, past crime or anything like that. You can't have that. You can't be committing any crimes either. And people are watched. They're in these programs. A lot of them, the FBI has them wiretapped and everything else. Watched all the time. This is for me knowing people personally and from my father and everything. So
Technology protection. I recently learned that was not the reason why. They just wanted the hardcore counterintelligence background, the security background, to make sure that
Makes sense.
the bad guys, the Russians.
Which strength do you want more, right? You need somebody that's going to be investigating, or instead of just a level of curiosity. But okay, let's stay on this. So now you're in there. Okay, you're in. You're going through it. At first, are you the guy that's always, I heard you say you're not a Star Wars guy, you're not a Star Trek guy, you weren't that guy, you weren't the guy that was a person that thought aliens and all these guys existed. But when you're going in, when was the first moment where you said, oh shit, things just got real?
Yeah, so it was a conversation with the director of OSAP, Dr. James Lukatsky, this rocket scientist. And I remember at the end of the conversation we had, he still didn't tell me what the program was about. And he says, so let me ask you something. Okay, he said, what do you think about UFOs? And I waited for a second. I thought. I said, I don't. I answered him truthfully. I don't think about them. And he's like, well, what do you mean? You don't believe in them? And I said, well, no, you didn't ask me that. You asked me, what do I think about them? And I don't think about them because I really don't have the luxury to think about them. I'm too busy doing, my daily job and paying the mortgage and whatnot. And he said, well, that's fair, but, let me give you a little piece of advice here. Don't let your analytic bias get the best of you, because what you're going to learn may challenge any preconceived notions or narratives that you have. And that was my first, at that moment, I wasn't sure if he was trying to maybe test me to see if I was maybe psychologically unstable. I didn't really respond to it, but that was probably my first real...
Yeah, I put in so many of my other videos and talked about where, Ben Rich, that worked at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. My father and there are people that worked on this stuff. And it has nothing to do with national security. And I can give the reasons why. The reasons why is that the Russians, the Chinese, already know what we have. They have their own stuff. They have satellites that can see stuff as well. And the biggest reason, they use national security is pretty much to keep his secrets from the public, from us, from knowing the truth. It's not about national security. It's just all a bunch of BS and everything. It's an excuse that they like to use. It's just BS. It's about control. The whole thing is about control and them weaponizing this spirit, magic, and tech, and psionics, controlling weaponized psionics, and telepathy and psychic abilities. and everything. It's very criminal what they do.
Production that, hey, there's something going on here that they're taking very serious.
How much longer after you got hired did you have that conversation with the doc?
Well, they threw me into the deep end of the pool. So it was very quickly I realized that what he was saying was absolutely legit. Now, people have always asked me, just like you did, what was it like when you first realized what was actually going on? There's two ways I've noticed people absorbing this information, in my experience, just being part of the program. Some have this revelatory aha moment, this epiphany. Oh my gosh, you mean they're real? Where others, it's more of a slow and steady, gradual realization and acceptance. For me, I was probably the latter category. It got to the point where it was obvious this wasn't our technology, and we were pretty darn sure this wasn't adversarial technology. And at that point, you're forced to reconcile, any narrative you may have had before. The information was very, very compelling. And by the way, it wasn't just me, it was our colleagues as well. And some of these folks are what I would consider intelligence community greats, the old graybeards. We had people, for example, like Dr. Kit Green. We had people like Hal Puthoff. Dr. Hal Puthoff was the godfather, if you will, of the CIA's remote viewing program, psychic espionage.
Sorry.
That was his program. Dr. Kit Green was in charge of the Weird Desk at the CIA. All these individuals, these legends in the IC, were actually part of OSAP and ATIP. It was just like I said, this incredible group of people. I often joke, but not really, that when I entered the room, I think the IQ probably dropped about 20 points. These folks were really, really, really intelligent. Some of the best astrophysicists that we had in the government were working this topic as well. And for me, it was, we had a dinner at the time early on with a four-star general in Brazil named General Uchoa. And he came to Washington, D.C., and provided some very, very compelling information about a Brazilian government investigation into an incident in a region of Brazil called Colares. Where he...
Saw this,
Yeah. And so very, very interesting. It was an official investigation by the Brazilian government.
And what conclusion did they come up with?
Well, the things were not man-made. And they had the ability and capability to harm people if they wanted to. And some of their own people, even in the Brazilian military, were injured.
Now, for you...
I remember doing a video on stuff of what happened in Brazil. There's lots of different things that's happened in South America. I don't know if I have a lot of stuff that I do different. I do a lot of different things, lots of different work. Anyway, where UFOs drain a billion gallons, I can't put that on YouTube. I'd have to do that on Kick because of copyright. Yes, but that might have been Brazil as well, or is Chile? I forgot which one. Chile, Argentina. Yeah, there are good and bad ETs. There's some. I think different ones do different. They're different categories and everything. So I'm some good, some are bad. And some want us, to become, to learn more about enlightenment, and some want to, use this for reproductive purposes and stuff. That's another thing, is that with some ETs, that from some people that have been abducted, if it's not reproductive or other purposes, that they are trying to also teach us about ESP, psychic abilities, and stuff like that. Some they've been people that they've abducted. They're given thoughts, implanted stuff, how to cultivate their minds, how to learn ESP, out of the body, and all this other stuff, type of things that we're much more than humans. We are. All of us have psychic abilities, latent abilities that people don't know about. We're all much more than people think. And, the government doesn't want people to know that. They don't.
So you have UAP, right? And you have UFOs. Because we used to hear UFOs. Now it's like unidentified. Okay. So
That's what I was calling
aliens. And you have, the separating the two. Yourself, with your own eyes, have you seen anything where you're 100% proof for your own self? Like, here's Jesus, here's the 12 disciples. They walk with them, right? And then they go and tell everybody else, look, I hung out with Jesus. Trust me, I saw this stuff, right? Or I saw the resurrection, right? Oh my God, I was there, right? So it's still witness. You're not the main source, but it's the witness. Are you at 100% that both aliens and UAPs exist?
So great question, and I think we need to, for your audience's sake, pull that question apart a little bit, because it's not so simple. It may seem like a simple answer, but it's not. And then let me explain.
To me, it's simple, but I want to hear how you explain.
Yeah,
it.
and then let me try to explain it. And then at the end, I'll give you the simple explanation.
Okay.
So when you say aliens, people think something from out there. Okay, so I've always told people when they say, "Oh, they're from outer space," they could be. They could be from outer space, inner space, or frankly, the space in between. So what do we mean by that?
This is the thing that I hate about these Neuralink things. And I made videos attacking, Musk and other people trying to Musk isn't the only person that has tried to do this. He's the only person that's gotten this far, right? And the thing is, if we learned our natural psychic telepathic abilities and how we can access information without even using computers, if we learned how to access that and how to even learn different languages without Neuralink, and there's ways of doing that. There is ways to be able to translate. A few times I've done just little bits of that sometimes. Not on a skill as some people could do a lot better. But the thing is, if stuff got declassified, there's be no need, no talk of a Neuralink and stuff like that so much. I mean, there's some things that mechanics can do. There are some things, mechanics can do. But there's some stuff that the spirit, our souls, can do much more than these Neuralinks and stuff like that. People are asking, what about people that can't walk, etc., etc. And that is another thing. That's another thing. You brought up how many people think that ETs are from outside our galaxy. May not be the case. You're absolutely right. The other dimensional stuff like that, yeah. Yeah, and how some have been living here among us, have had their own bases for X amount, thousands and thousands of years or forever, and how they could be a part of our creation as well, and how they could be interdimensional as well. They could spirits and stuff like that. It's not all about being from space. It's not. There are different civilizations and stuff like that. Everything is a lot bigger than people think. A lot bigger. A lot grander. And that's why I call this a multiverse and everything, because it's not just one universe, it's multi-layered and everything. So you're definitely, on that, where not everything is from exactly another world. It's much bigger than that.
This is a wonderfully complex universe we live in, and we are realizing new paradigms almost every day in the world of science. So let me give you a case in point. I told you I went to University of Miami. I studied microbiology and immunology. There are people, scientists right now, anthropologists, who believe that modern humans, Homo sapiens sapien, has been around for the last 100 to 200,000 years.
Yep.
It wasn't until the Greeks, 2,000 years ago, that we actually recognized the two major life forms on this planet. And you were either a plant or you were an animal, and human beings fell into that animal category.
Right.
And we were very proud of ourselves. And it wasn't until the Renaissance, or the days of enlightenment, about 300 some years ago, where we discovered a whole new life form on this planet that we've been sharing all along. And that was the world of fungus. And so again, pat ourselves on the shoulder. You're either plant, an animal, or you're fungus. Now, it wasn't until the last think about this, out of 200,000 years of modern human history, of being actually modern humans, not human history, that it was the last 120 years that we actually discovered the true dominant.
Another thing that you touched on, lost the train of thought, how some people, some big time people, have talked about the human mind and what we can create from our minds, and how sometimes it seems like we can create stuff out of our own imagination. And there have been some people, I was watching on History Channel, how some scientists, I think outside of the box, alright, they said that some of the stuff that we could see out there, some things could be manifest of our own imagination that's gone to another level, a psychic level. That's a lot more powerful than the imagination. We actually create something that's real, like a construct, but it's actually real and other people could see it. And everything. It goes beyond imagination. So, how psychic abilities and stuff can work in creating machinations. Also, that's another thing, another thing as well. Some people have talked about as well.
Life form on this planet. In fact, if you add up all the biomass of every plant, and all the biomass of every animal, and all the biomass of every fungus, and add it all up together, it still will not equal the biomass of the true dominant life form on this planet. And it wasn't until we could curve glass and look through a little steel tube and famously shout, little beasties, did we discover the world of microorganisms that are inside every single human being, that makes us up as individuals, that can survive on the skin of the ISS space station and can survive the crushing depths of miles of ice underneath the Arctic. So
plant, animal, fungus, microorganism.
Right. So my point being is that this is the true dominant life form that's been on this planet all along, and we just discovered it 120 years ago. So is it possible that these friends from out of town, these UAP, are just as natural to Earth as we are? Maybe we're at the point now where technologically we can start tracking them. Maybe they're from under the ocean. Look, we've only mapped less than 10% of the ocean floor. We know more about the surface of the moon than we know about our own oceans. Is it possible these things could be coming from underneath the oceans? Yes, that's possible too.
Yes, they are.
So there's a whole.
Yeah.
So when we say the word aliens, we have to be careful because people automatically presume we're talking about things from out there, and we're not really sure if they really are from out there. They could be from right here. There's so many different possibilities, and this is why in ATIP we've always said that all options have to be on the table until they're no longer on the table. And so, back to your question, aliens, UFOs, have I had seen hard evidence. I have seen hard evidence that there is technology out there that's not made by us. But whether to say that they're aliens from out there.
Okay, let's start on that though.
Yeah.
Let's start with that one, and then I'll go a little bit deeper.
Yeah,
So
hold on. Let's see. The Shroud Turin. This alien was created by light, but the order of magnitudes of energy for. This is something I have not talked about as myself. My near-death experience is that spontaneous combustion. Look this up. I need people to look this up sometime. How people, let's see. Let's see here. If I can, no, I'll put on both here. Let's see. I had an awakening with that. Okay, so, let's go here, put on here. Hopefully that's really just, I don't know. Let's see. I don't feel like, I'm not going to give it the time to spell. Combustion was combustion. Or the experience. Okay. So, spontaneous combustion for me, alright? I was on fire, alright, when I had mine, and this goes into this and what you're talking about. Energy. We're made of energy. We're energy, not just flesh. We're not. Our souls, everything, is made of electromagnetic energy. And when I had my near-death experience at this nursing home, my fluids that just, everything just turned to fire just about, and fluids went down over like 2 feet, all right? At least this big. It's probably 2 feet actually, all right? And the energy that I was becoming and everything, it's just like it's totally enveloping me and stuff like that. And I soaked through all that. Not only that, but I've had energy from my hand as well, and I've put it against something, and it create like these colors and stuff like that. And we're all made of energy. This flesh we're flesh bags. This is not exactly all that we are. This isn't who we are exactly. It is, but it isn't. All right? In the afterlife, we can look a lot different and stuff like that. We don't have all this pain and suffering, etc., right? But going back to what you're saying, we are energy. At least in death. And right now, we have ki, we have chi. And sometimes we can use it to heal people. Is there a sensation other than pain? That was not what you talking about. For me or whatever, oh man. It's like I was on fire. It's like my body was on fire. And things were dripping out and everything. And it's like I could feel like myself going out of my body and everything. Everything about my body was changing, turning to energy and everything. It's how we are and how even we can use things to heal people. The energy, the ki and chi that we have. the heat. This goes apart with Dragon Ball as well. Dragon Ball, the anime, Ultra Instinct. The heat, the energy that we have. How we can use the energy that we have inside of us to also help people do things as well. So,
Technology you've seen that is not made by us. Okay. You've personally witnessed it. You've seen it right in front of you.
I've held it in my hand, material.
Okay. What was unique about this technology?
Sure. Well, let's start with material science, right?
Okay.
So let's take this pen, for example. I'm in the desert, and I find this pen on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to look at
I
this.
need to give a shout out again. This is PBD, Peter Bet David Podcast. Again, he does all kinds of different content. So just want to put that out there, you know.
Do a physical analysis, right?
Okay.
At the macro level. I'm
Yep.
going to look at it. It's hard, it's plastic, it's kind of cylindrical, do some measurements, how much does it weigh? And then what I'll probably do is go and do a chemical or molecular analysis, where I'm now going to go and I'm going to see the actual relationships of the molecules themselves, and I can see that there's some stainless steel, maybe some rubber, and how how they are arranged, those molecules. And then what I'm going to do is say, you know, this is really unique enough. I'm going to do an atomic analysis. I want to look at things like isotopic ratios, which are, there's a varying degree of isotopic ratios that are found in nature. When you find them that are outside that spectrum, then they're not natural, meaning they've either been engineered or they're from somewhere else. So case in point, there was a little dagger that was found back when we found Tutankhamun's his tomb back in the 20s. And it was a little dagger, nobody paid much attention to it until they did analysis on it. And they realized that the nickel content in that dagger was not found on Earth. It actually came from an asteroid.
Yeah.
And that's why that dagger was so important, why they buried it with King Tut, because it was made from an asteroid. So that's how we can tell if something is made naturally here on Earth or if it's not. And then you're going to look at the arrangements of the atoms themselves in basically a lattice-type matrix.
Right.
How were the atoms arranged? Now, keep in mind, to arrange atoms very specifically is A, very costly, and B, takes a lot of technology and sophistication to do. We only recently have had that technology to arrange atoms that accurately, right? So when you find a piece of something and it does not have, it's clearly engineered, it's got a beveled edge, it's been manufactured, and it's been put away in it together in a way that we cannot replicate still, right? And then turns out, oh, by the way, this material it was found decades ago. You are then forced to ask the questions, logical questions. Okay, well, if we can't make it, we did make it, who did? Who has the technology, right? So the further back in time you go, the more you realize no one had that technology. So if you found, let's say, a garage door opener, and you were Mike Da Vinci, and you were walking in the desert and you found a garage door opener back in the 1600s, didn't discover plastic, and certainly the electromagnetic spectrum wasn't even discovered, right? So who built it? It doesn't make sense that you're going to find this material that is so precisely engineered, and you're going to be able to, and by the way, some country built it 3 decades ago, 4 decades ago, 5 decades ago. And so that's how that scientific analysis is so important. Now, let me caveat. I did not do the analysis. I am not a trained material scientist, and I'm not a material engineer, but we had people in the government who were. And we had organizations, very reputable organizations. For example, let's say NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, right? The best of the best. Conduct analysis. And when they come back with a big goose egg and say, look, man, I can't tell you where this came from. I have no idea. But we cannot manufacture
What's
that.
it capable of doing?
Well, that's a great question. Apparently, it can do all sorts of interesting stuff, but we're not sure yet because it's part of something else, part of a bigger system, right? It's like this pen. If I find just the pen cap of it, well, it's interesting, and I think I know what it does, but maybe it can do a whole lot of other things. So we don't know yet everything it can do. We have some theories. Some of the folks that I worked with at OSAP and ATIP have some very interesting theories.
Such as?
So one is multiple waveform capabilities. Another one is potentially some sort of antigravitic, meaning the ability to defy the natural effects of Earth's gravity without the associated technologies, right?
These are purely assumptions, or is there a reason based on a certain formula they saw to say that's capable of doing X, Y, Z?
Actually tests. So it wasn't either.
Oh, okay.
It was actually tests that
Yeah.
they did, and they said, this is a very interesting property. If you take this material and you bombard it with X terahertz of radiation, interesting things start to happen.
Which we didn't do because we don't know what it's capable of. It could even be explosive.
But he did talk about waves, gravity, which be gravity waves, or it could be cosmic waves, stuff that also comes from the known universe that flows through the universe, and using that energy and flipping gravity and time and space on itself as well.
Right. So did we test it out, or?
So I have.
Because you're playing with fire a little bit, no?
Yeah, sure. Every time you have something that of unknown origin, you have to be careful. Just like this conversation, believe it or not, because I was cleared by the Pentagon to talk about whatever's in there is cleared. I'm good to talk about. I have to be very careful, though, about going beyond that because I don't have clearance to talk about that. I have not been cleared by the Pentagon. I still, just full disclosure, I still maintain my security clearance with the government. I still consult from time to time. So they made it very clear to me that I have to be.
I have to comment on this because a lot of people say he is a plant and they attack him for not talking about enough stuff. He gives the reason right here. If he talks too much, he loses his top secret clearance and everything, which others did do, even though some people, like me, some of us, still know people from the inside and stuff like that. No top secret clearance or anything like that. We just know people or whatever. He doesn't want to lose that top secret clearance. And that's another reason. Not only that, but each time you talk about something that is not under the whistleblower clause, that's 25 years. That can be mandatory 25 years to life for each charge, which is a felony, a federal offense. So there's a reason that, say, my father and others were not willing to talk about certain classified stuff. 25 years to life for just one thing you say, when there's dozens of others or hundreds of other things. That adds up on you. Hard time.
Very careful not to talk about something that I'm not allowed to talk about. So, again, I'm being a little bit vague on purpose, but yes, if you have material, let's say this pen, you find in the middle of the desert, and you start finding interesting properties associated with this pen, and by the way, it was made at a time where we couldn't manufacture pens, we didn't have the technology, now you have something very interesting.
Okay, so now let me ask this question about, so when you say the atomic, we test it out this way, we test it out that way to see the nuclear this, to see the atomic this, and we're like, nobody's done it. Is this where the world is aligned, where you ship it out or somebody flies out with it to Russia to see if the Russian engineers know, or we fly them in? Do we test it out with other allies to say, hey, China come in, hey, Russia come in, because this is the one area everybody around the world is unified on?
Absolutely not. And we should. This is the problem. This is why this is the other part of that equation.
So if you say it's unidentified object, then we don't 100% know because
it's unidentified.
And you start finding interesting properties associated with this pen. And by the way, it was made at a time where we couldn't manufacture pens. We didn't have the technology. Now you have something very interesting.
Okay, so now let me ask this question about, so when you say the atomic, we test it out this way, we test it out that way to see the nuclear this, to see the atomic this, and we're like, nobody's done it. Is this where the world is aligned, where you ship it out or somebody flies out with it to Russia to see if the Russian engineers know, or we fly them in? Do we test it out with other allies to say, hey, China come in, hey, Russia come in, because this is the one area everybody around the world is unified on?
Absolutely not. And we should. This is the problem. This is why this is the other part of that equation.
So then if you say it's unidentified object, then we don't.
But everybody wants to rule the world. Everybody wants to be world ruler. Everybody, these are sociopaths, and they want the power for themselves. So they don't care about the common good of what this stuff could do and get us to other planets, other civilizations, meeting new sentience, new life forms, and learning, and really about also evolving into something more than human. They don't want that to happen. So
100% no, because it may have come from Russia or China or anywhere else that maybe at some point their engineers figured something out that we just don't know about.
That's a great point. So let's go down that rabbit hole for a minute,
please.
because that's wonderful logic, and you're absolutely correct to presume that. So let's take that argument for a second and deconstruct it just a little bit. Let's look at where some of this material, its origins came from. So it came right at the end of 1940s. Okay, this is material that to this day we cannot replicate. So that would assume that some country out there has, since in the late 1940s, early 1950s, which, by the way, where was China? It was in the middle of a famine. Where was Russia? Well, they were barely trying to develop an atomic bomb. We had barely broken the speed of sound, Mach 1, and we hadn't been to space yet, right? So that means some country had the technology to build something in total secret and then deploy that capability over controlled U.S. airspace and over censored military installations, and has been doing so for at least 75 years. Now, if that is the case, then this would be the greatest intelligence failure this country has ever experienced, eclipsing that of even 9/11. And I don't say that lightly, because 9/11 just happened, right? I mean, this is, we're celebrating,
23 years.
We're not celebrating anything. We're unfortunately memorializing 23 years. You know, it was a horrible event. But this would be even worse than that, because that means despite the billions of dollars that we invest each year into our intelligence community and our national security apparatus and all 17 intelligence organizations out there, someone has managed to fly under the radar, no pun intended, with this technology, create it and deploy it without zero accountability, meaning no one knows, zero sponsorship, no one knows who's behind this technology. And so that means our country is totally failed. We've been leapfrogged technologically by an adversary, and oh, by the way, have been for the last 75 years. So that's not a really good scenario to be in, right? And so we invest a lot of money to always keep a competitive edge on our adversaries. We're looking very, very carefully at their new emerging technologies, whether it's Russian hypersonics or, other technologies they're working on. We know what they have.
Where do we find this piece?
I guess I can talk about it. So the material that I have personally held in my hand was acquired by some folks in the OSAP program, allegedly from a crash that occurred at Roswell.
At Roswell.
Yep.
Okay, got it. So we know where it came from. It's here. So here's the other question for you. Do you remember when, the stories we read about that Hitler was fascinated with Antarctica, so he goes out there and then...
I remember. I knew that these elements, including including others, existed, and I know that others do as well. That were hide that's being hidden. I knew that element 115, 116, etc. Existed. I knew that when I was a child, right? When I was a kid. And not a child, but a kid. And I said it has to, and I think it has to be right now, because it's being used. It's part of this tech that's being used. The element. It's not even tech, it's an element. It's an element that's doing it. And some stuff they use is natural and stuff like that as well. And when they finally, came out that was real, it's like I said, yeah, of course it is. It makes sense. That's why. It makes total sense and everything. And people used to attack, Rob Lazar and other people, that, talked about, 115 and other elements as well as, potential 116, 117, and on, right? And, they do exist. I mean, I talked with one guy in particular about making different metals that's, classified and stuff like that. And steel, type of steel that's ultra lightweight and stuff like that. And some guys, are thinking, hey, this come from UFO stuff, and probably, and it's just been re-engineered, and stuff like that. So, I mean, you got stuff that's as tough as steel or even tougher than steel, but it's ultra lightweight. And you can bet that a lot of the stuff is most likely being used at underground facilities. Well, yeah, at some universities, they do that. You see the defense contractors go to universities as well. I invite you to look up some of these, different videos and on the internet about how defense contractors and intelligence uses different universities and colleges, and they sought out people, that goes through metallurgy and stuff like that, archaeology and all this other stuff to see if they can reproduce it. You talk about engineers as well, they go to at these universities and stuff like that. So MIT, etc. So.
Is investigating what is going on, what's out there. We're curious about it. Then U.S. sends a bunch of people. So wait a minute, we can't get Germany to figure something out before we do. And then all of a sudden, everybody gets on the same page when it comes down to Antarctica. There's representation that they have. A bunch of these countries are representing what's going on there, and they're very unified for that topic, right? A little bit weird, but I can understand it. What do they know that they don't want the rest of the world to know? I don't know, right? Is the idea of UFOs currently...
Let's see here. I'll talk to the trees.
like that as well? Like, is there a board where people from around, like a World Economic Forum, is there a board like that where representative from different countries that if aliens from another country want to attack us, it becomes Earth against everyone else. It doesn't become, a U.S. or China or Russia. You're borderless now because your borders is the space, right? Does anything like that exist?
So, Ronald Reagan once famously said a very interesting quote where he talked about, imagine if we all of a sudden faced with the reality of let's say, an alien threat, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden how our petty differences that we have with one another and our other countries would probably completely evaporate overnight.
Sure.
We'd all be solidarity and sing kumbaya and, work together.
Right.
The reality is that there were very specific reasons why the U.S. government did not want to engage in a conversation about the UAP topic. And it makes sense. So let me go into that a little bit and see if this maybe scratches your itch on your question. So let's look at when the U.S. government was really interested in UAPs. Well, it really goes all the way back to the 1950s and all the way through the 60s and the 70s. We had Project Blue Book, and there are reports you can see online right now, highly classified documents, very classified, that were classified, that have since been declassified and released through the Freedom of Information Act process. So now anybody can get online and pull some of these documents up, and you will see that there have been UAP encounters over our centers of military installations, like, for example, a research center like Oak Ridge National Laboratory or Savannah River Facility, where we were doing certain things, technologically speaking. These UAP have been seen a lot and have been investigated continuously by the U.S. government. So back to the issue here regarding UAP and regarding historical, and you asked if there's like this international group of people. At the height of the Cold War, we had this real threat with the then Soviet Union, right? They had nukes, we had nukes, and we were playing this winner-takes-all chess game
You could also say that humans could be part of an experiment, some people think. That, we're like a petri dish and everything else, and we are grown, we are observed, and some are supposed to help us along our evolution, so we're just there to watch the show, and some are there to make their own hybrid race from us as well, create other races, etc. If they did have hostile, if there were, if they wanted to, they could just blow everything up. They definitely could. Whatever technology, magic stuff, spirit stuff we have, they could counter that. They're like hundreds of thousands of years ahead of us, if not at least 200,000 years, it seems. Though, since we get some stuff from them, it's not so far behind, but we're still very far behind them. They can counter anything we throw at them. That is the big question, isn't it? Out of all these ETs, and other races, and so-called gods that are out there, because how we see an ET or extraterrestrial, or it's hard to explain it in human terms. It's hard to do that. But then compared to us, there are gods and stuff like that. The Alpha Observer, that's the big question, definitely. Who is the creator and stuff like that, etc. And everybody has an opinion on that and everything. For me, I have mine and stuff like that from my experiences and their death experiences, etc. So people have theirs, etc. So there's different levels, and some being and beings created this being, and God could be multiple deities and be one. Be one person and many. And that's what a lot of people don't get as well. You know what I'm saying? So it's crazy, but it's like he, she is all the above. Not just one thing, but many. And created other races, civilizations, and they helped create us. They helped create us, etc., and everything else, and all this other stuff.
That we called the Cold War, which, by the way, in reality was pretty hot. There was a lot of proxy wars, right? It wasn't cold at all. And so the generals say to themselves, look, we've got this real threat over here. Yeah, we've got these other things, but they're not really doing anything overly provocative, and there's not a whole lot we can do about them right now. Let's just focus on the Russia threat, and then later on, when we have time, we can worry about this other stuff, right? And then you have the other mindset in the government, which is our job in the government is to be solution-oriented. It's not a great conversation to have, any government with their people, to say, oh, look, by the way, there's something over here that's, doing stuff that we can't replicate, and there's nothing we can do about it, right? That's not a great conversation to have until you have a solution. So the Department of Defense and the intelligence community, being solution-focused, don't want to admit there's a problem until you have a solution. Case in point, here's a perfect example for you. When we started flying the U-2 spy airplane, which was built by Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and commissioned by the Central Intelligence Agency, we were flying it over mainland Russia. And in contravention, that's right, in contravention of the treaty that we had with the Russians, that we weren't going to fly reconnaissance missions over their country. Now, they didn't react. So we thought this plane flew so high and so fast that the Russians couldn't see us, right? Because Russians didn't do anything. It wasn't until the Russians were able to develop an SA-2 surface-to-air missile and successfully shoot one down did they ever admit to their people and the world that they've been watching us, right? Why admit a problem for there's no solution? It wasn't until the Russians could actually shoot one down that they said,
you look weak.
That's right. So they've been saying, hey, we've been tracking every one of your flights, but now we can shoot them down, right? So that is also part of that mindset, right? Why? And there were some studies done back in the 60s and 70s, actual real studies for the government, where the government asked the question, look, if we're truthful about UAPs and we decide to disclose the truth about UFOs, what would the net result be on the population? And they came back with the unanimous no, don't do it. That the American population...
I should say near-death experience. Some people have different... a lot of people have the same kind, some people have different kinds and stuff. I invite people to really watch videos and see the different kinds, etc., and everything. But see, God is not just one, but many. Multiple, many, not just one. There's a reason why we also have male and female. Because not just one, not just man either. All that, everything is spaced, and there's other, these, so-called gods and stuff like that, compared to us, right? But it's like they're deities, but they're not, it's just compared to us humans they are, right? And everything, and power and what they can do and everything. So that's how us humans, that's how us humans interpret it, etc.
Absolutely cannot have this discussion. They cannot handle the truth. It will cause...
Who said this? Who was the president?
So it wasn't the president. Actually, it was a study done. I think it was a RAND Corporation that did the study. It's a very famous study, and basically said that the American people, this would cause people to lose faith in their religions, their faith and confidence in government, and it was basically a definitive no. Now there was also...
What year is this?
There were two studies. So I believe one for sure was in the 70s. I think one was in the 60s. But you can look them up online.
Okay.
They're there. And I think Rand Corporation was one, and then there was another one. When we're done with this, I'll get you the actual details, because I don't want to give you incorrect information. So there's that problem too, right? So why admit an issue for which there's no solution, which makes sense, especially when you are a world superpower, right? You don't want to look weak, exactly like you said. And it's really not that uncommon. There are other examples throughout history where governments have kept things quiet until they had a solution for it, right? Now, it turns out that I believe Americans can handle the truth, because we're having a conversation now, you and me and your audience, right? And no one's making a run on the bank, and we all realize we have mortgages to pay, and we have to go to PTA meetings and take the kids to...
we're having conversations, and you have sociopaths and governments that we can't handle the truth. I mean, there's always going to be some pansies out there that cannot handle truth. And those are people that just don't have enough intelligence to, know how to handle things, period, anyway. They run around with their so-called heads cut off like a chicken, saying, the sky is falling, type of thing. There's always going to be those type of people, but most can, and everything.
Soccer. If you talk to the younger generation now, they kind of look at it and go, meh, right? They have this reaction where our old generation was like, oh, you can't tell anybody, and we want to have this active campaign to actually suppress this information and make people look like idiots. The newer generation, I think, is a lot more open to this topic. They have I think probably because of the pervasiveness of information now, and the cell phone technology, they can pretty much pull up any information anywhere in the world instantly, and have it translated.
It's like with yin and yang. It's like evil, light, and darkness. There'd be people that, let's talk about theoretics and stuff, about some of the stuff where, you have the elitists in religions where, God, is going to take this out, take away all evil, and darkness, and stuff like that. But then there's the counter philosophy and theoretics and everything, where darkness gives way to light, and how darkness is there to destroy, and light is there to grow and create life. That you have to have one and the other. There's that kind of philosophy and theory and stuff like that. So, conscious and unconscious.
In whatever language they want. And so I think they're maybe a little more accepting and wise to this.
Would you consider yourself a whistleblower?
Whoa. Well, I guess it depends who you ask. If you're asking me, no, I'm a patriot. There's whistleblowers come forward when there is some sort of malfeasance.
And what a lot of people that are, ultimate, religious stuff like that. And me, I see both sides. It's that if there's a God, he can destroy all darkness, all evil. And then I could say, well, he could have done that already. God could have done that already. If I was God, I would have done that. There would be no pain, no suffering, no tears. There would be violence. So it seems whoever is in charge has the yin yang. Darkness and light thing going. You call that sociopathic or psychopathic as well. And there's different, things, where people say God's good all the time, and you can say not always. And stuff. But, that's... Anyways, let's get back.
Reasons for problem in the government, which I did do, but I'm not really looking for protection like a whistleblower.
The reason why I asked that, because everywhere when I saw you being painted on the articles, right? If I go online and I type in your name and I type in whistleblower, Rob, if you could do that. So, Guardian, whistleblower who spoke out on UFO claims Pentagon tried to discredit him. Luis Elizondo lodges complaint with Defense Inspector General. Defense Department accused of disinformation campaign.
You have to in order to talk about this.
Okay.
Stuff.
Then I go to the next one, Fox News. Fox, this is 2024, June 2024, if you want to pull that up. U.S. whistleblower says he's being threatened as congressman, warns protections are a joke.
Yeah.
Elizondo, former head of Advanced Aerospace, again, ATIP, said he's faced threats as he pushes for UFO transparency, right? Mm-hmm. And continuously, those two are linked. You're saying you're not a whistleblower.
Well, whistleblowers, there's a legal definition of whistleblower. Then there's a vernacular. Right. So if you want to actually be a government whistleblower, right, it's usually involving fraud, waste, and abuse. So if you look at the legal definition of whistleblower, it's very narrowly defined. The problem is that in the vernacular, the term whistleblower is used for other things beyond just fraud, waste, and abuse. But from a governmental perspective, that term is very specific, for the most part, to relate to some sort of malfeasance or fraud, waste, and abuse. And that's why people are very narrowly defined for legal protections as a whistleblower. Now, we as a society consider anybody who's willing to step forward and basically draw attention to something that's wrong as a whistleblower. So that's why I'm hesitant to call myself a whistleblower if I don't fall under the legal definition of a whistleblower according to the U.S. government. But at the same time, I'm doing what a lot of whistleblowers do.
Does
right?
the U.S. government think you're a whistleblower?
Oh my gosh! Well, I think some do, and I think probably some think I'm the devil.
But the U.S. government, do they think you're a whistleblower? Because, and the reason why I'm asking this question is, if they think you're the whistleblower and you're being everywhere, Wikipedia whistleblower, Fox whistleblower, Guardian whistleblower, everywhere you're painted and written about. If the average person looks you up, they would say this guy's a whistleblower. But if that's the case, how do you still hold on to a secret, clearance? How does that happen?
Usually it never happens.
Well,
usually.
because I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't broken the law.
That's where people can say he's a plant right there, right? This is where the argument comes in. He still has top secret clearance. Because he's a plant. Everybody's got their opinion on this. I mean, again, I just go by what I know about law. He says is true. If he's a plant, he is. If he isn't, he isn't.
Law, I haven't leaked information. I'm not like Edward Snowden or anything like that.
Yeah, but if I'm the U.S. government, if you truly are somebody that's going out there and the government's not happy for you, I would cut your secret clearance overnight. I'd be like, guys, this guy's going out there talking. What makes you think one day he's not going to get drunk or have a beer with somebody, and maybe he's sitting with a celebrity and wants to brag about how much he knows? We got to cut this guy's secret clearance off. Why are we keeping him on that? Why are they still giving you secret clearance?
Well, first of all, if they did that, it's called retribution, which is illegal, right?
So they can't
do all the
they
time.
can't. Well, they tried, but they failed.
All the time.
And there are, by the way, I will also say, in the government's defense, there's
nothing illegal. I mean, it's illegal, but it's not illegal. It's national security. They do that to everyone. They cut off. They cut off all the time, but it's about national security. They could do that any time. They do it all the time, or whatever. It may be retribution, but they're above legalities. They're above the legal system. And if you go to court, going against them and say it's illegal, they're going to counter that and say, hey, it's about national security. The judge is going to say, okay, toss it out. Because they're not going to touch that. Because, I mean, there are very few judges that know better and it will question anything. Right?
Well, large group of people in the government that want this conversation to occur. They look at this topic where,
I agree.
Secrecy has a shelf life. Some people think secrecy is like a fine bottle of wine, and the longer you keep a cork on it, the better it gets, when in reality, I've told people that secrets are like vegetables in your refrigerator. And if you keep them there too long, they start to rot and they stink, and now you got a real big mess on your hands. And so this is very much the same way. I believe now that there is a group of individuals in the government that are actively wanting this conversation to occur. We certainly know that's the case in Congress right now. So, and this is, by the way, I think almost historic, because it's one of the few bipartisan issues.
Honestly, I have defended this guy a lot of times because people say he's a liar. All I do know is this: a lot of what he says is true. Is he a plant? Hell yeah, he could definitely be a plant, definitely. I know that very well. Because, like we said, anybody that talks, you automatically get it, that clearance cut, automatically. So I mean, I see, definitely both sides of that and everything. And like I always tell people, go by what you know and what you have learned and what you have seen. Don't trust anything else. Trust your own experiences and everything. I'm not going to put my trust in him or anybody else. I just go by what I know, what I experienced from others. So, Rubio did. Marco Rubio. In some ways, he also acts like a Manchurian candidate. He all sounds like a total different person. He's flipped on so many things. And that is like a Manchurian candidate. Where it seems like he was like brainwashed. Something happened with his mind. With Marco Rubio and some other people.
Whether you're a liberal or conservative, that's actually being championed in Congress by both sides.
Who doesn't want this conversation to be had?
Oh, wow. There's a few. Most particularly are those who've been involved in any legacy efforts regarding this program. There's some very specific reasons why you would not want to have this conversation. So let's perfect example. You're company A, I'm company B. Mm-hmm. Aerospace company, and the government comes in and says, hey, listen, I want you to analyze this piece of material. Right now, there's supposed to be fair competition amongst companies, but they give it to you. Mm-hmm. 10 years later, you're now a multi-billion-dollar aerospace corporation. My company goes bankrupt, 200 people lose their jobs, and oh, by the way...
Oh, God. Oh, hell no.
I want to have this conversation, so let's perfect example. You're company A, I'm company B. Mm-hmm. Aerospace company. And
I should say, YouTube does this when they want to force you to relaunch and update everything. They will actually shut your stuff down. These pieces of shit people at YouTube. Fuck you, YouTube, for doing that.
The government comes in and says, hey, listen, I want you to analyze this piece of material. Right now, there's supposed to be fair competition amongst companies, but they give it to you. Mm-hmm. 10 years later, you're now a multi-billion-dollar aerospace corporation. My company goes bankrupt, 200 people lose their jobs, and oh, by the way, my shareholders lose their investment. Right, so now you've got SEC violations, you've got unfair business practices being pushed by the government, certain individuals to certain companies. So there's real liability there. And then you've got the fact that people in the government simply didn't do what they were supposed to do and inform certain members of Congress. This goes back to your question about what made Harry Reid so angry, because he knew that there were these secret deals going back and forth. And of all the people in the Senate who should have known, he should have known. And he was deliberately being kept out of the loop. And furthermore, you even have some presidents that were never briefed into this topic.
Right.
Such as?
Well,
that's
most of them recently.
Laugh.
I mean, some of them now are learning about it after the fact. Some presidents were briefed into it. Some presidents were not briefed into it. And so think about that, for example, right? So let's look at this on the context of what it means to be an American, right? We believe in the principles of the Constitution because this is a government for the people and by the people, right? And we all agree that. And the government is here to serve the interests of the people, not the other way around. And the government is comprised of people.
Doesn't.
Well, imagine a scenario where you have somebody in the government making a unilateral decision not to inform their chain of command, not to inform the president, and not to inform certain people in Congress. Why? Well, because for whatever reason, they look at them as temporary hires. So that is what drives me to do what I'm doing. UFOs, UAP aside, to me, it's a matter of accountability and transparency. I personally believe that Americans can handle the truth, and it's up to nobody in government to make you.
That's what makes me laugh, is that some of us know more than these presidents do about UFOs and everything, about reality and stuff. And that's as dumb and stupid as I am in a lot of stuff. This is like my one, I don't like to say this, but trump card in some ways. This is the only thing I excel in, is know stuff about UFOs. Anyways, I don't know, I have to have something that I'm good at, I guess, I don't know.
Unilateral decision, what you should be allowed to know.
For the last 4 years, every time we do podcasts, I have to ask Rob or somebody, hey, can you pull up this news? Can you pull up that? Which way do these guys lean? Can you go back to the timeline of? Eventually, after asking so many questions, I said, why don't we design the website that we want aggregated? We don't write the articles. We feed all of it in using AI. So 8 months ago, I hired 15 machine learning engineers. They put together our news site called vtnews.ai. What this allows you to do when you go to it, if you go to that story right there that says Trump proposes overtime pay, click on it, it'll tell you how many sources are reporting on this from the left. If you go to the right, Rob, it says left sources, click on it. Those are all the left sources. If I want to go to right sources, those are the stuff. If I want to go to center, I go there. Now, if I want to go all the way to the top, and I want to find out a lopsided story, a story that only one side is reporting on, either the left or the right. So if you notice the first one, will say Zelensky announces release of 49 Ukrainians from Russia. Notice more people on the left are reporting on that than the right. If I go to the middle one, same thing. If I go to the right one, same thing. You can see what stories are lopsided.
Are skewed, yeah.
And if I pick one of the stories, pick the first story, click on a Trump one, proposes overtime tax cuts. To the right on the AI, I can ask any question I want, but click on the first question that has it. It says, what is the political context and potential motivation behind the Trump's new tax cut proposal? Click on the question mark. It explains exactly what the motives are. So for you to use, whether you're doing a podcast, you're in the middle of a podcast, or you just want to know it for yourself, you're busy like myself. And last but not least, this is all AI doing this, so machine learning engineers. Go all the way to the top. I can go to timelines, and see how far back a story goes. Pick the Israel-Palestinian conflict. If I want to go to that and go back and see why are those 2 days a big spike, I'll have Rob pull it over to go to those 2 days with the big spike. And I'll see exactly what happened on that day or the previous day. And many other features VTnews.ai has. So simply go to VTnews.ai. There's a freemium model, there's a premium, and then there's the insider. If you want to have unlimited access to the AI, click on the VTAI Insider. You can now become a member effectively today.
Now, if we're talking...
There is a reason why I don't do all my stuff on YouTube, is because of, they've never all, given me a fair shake. And some of the stuff that I do is talk about, of course, the adult industry as well and other stuff that they may not like, is some other things that are, they're not exactly for. So, I mean, it's a good thing that I have other places and, other things I could do. That's YouTube right there.
Talking about protecting sources and methods, we're talking about protecting military operations. I got it. There's a reason to have things classified. But the mere fact that these things are real, the mere fact that we may not be alone in the universe, no organization, institution, religion, government has the right to keep that from people, right? And where I come from, my father was a revolutionary in Cuba. He was part of the Bay of Pigs invasion, came here with not a dime in his pocket. And my family is in exile from Cuba because of that participation. And he told me about 2 years ago, right before he died, I'll share something with you. And maybe this kind of gives you some insight of why I do what I do.
Awesome.
About a month before my father passed away, I had a chance to go on a nice long road trip with him. And I knew he was dying. He didn't tell me he was, but I could see the signs. It was coming. And so about halfway through the trip, I asked him actually flippantly, and I feel kind of guilty about it. I said, Dad, what do you think is the greatest threat to humanity? And I'm thinking to myself, disease, pandemic, terrorism.
I say government.
And he looked to me and he said, son, corruption.
Corruption,
I said, corruption? Like financial corruption? He says, no, son, any corruption.
Yeah.
Corruption is a mere act of trading away one of your core values in exchange for something else. And so whether it's financial corruption, religious corruption, governmental corruption, moral corruption, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And when you do that in government, when you're in a government official and you are corrupt, you begin to chisel away the very foundation of what democracy is. And from there, it's a very slippery slope down to tyranny. So my beef with this is people in the government that have historically kept this knowledge out of the channels that it was supposed to be in the first place. Not letting Congress know what's going on, spending billions of dollars of taxpayer money and never informing Congress about what's going on. Same thing with the presidents and their chain of command. You can't have you're not going to get rid of corruption until you have transparency and accountability. And you only have accountability through transparency. So it all starts with transparency. If you want all this to be fixed, you got to be transparent. And, the government doesn't always like to do that. Now, I also want to be clear. I'm not villainizing the whole government. I love my country. I love my government. And it does a lot of things really, really good. I think it's the best country in the world. But with that said, because of, like you, I took an oath to this country to defend it from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Full stop. And by the way, you and I have never been relieved of that oath. I don't know, maybe you have. They never told me I don't have to do that anymore. So for me, it turns out that part of the enemy was the bureaucracy itself. It wasn't working in a way that allowed, even my own Secretary of Defense, a guy I was in Afghanistan with, right? This guy was incredible, Jim Mattis. The elements in the Pentagon wouldn't even let me brief him. Talk about a need to know, right? This is a guy who thrives on more information, not less. This is, the warrior monk. This is Mad Dog. This is call sign chaos. And even him, they wouldn't brief on this topic. So that's a failure of the system. And by the way, I don't want to villainize any one person because their reasoning for it, I understand. I don't agree with it, but I can respect it because it makes sense. There were several reasons why they didn't want the boss to be informed. It wasn't that they were making unilateral decisions saying, he doesn't deserve it. There were some very specific reasons, which again, if at some point you want, I'm happy to talk about those. But
brainwashing stuff.
Who are they?
These are senior officials. I don't want to name them by name. I'm very careful not to do, because I don't want, first of all, their privacy. I want to maintain their privacy too. I've been harassed. I've been threatened on a regular basis. I don't want that to happen to them.
So they have more power than Mattis does.
Well, they don't have more power, but they can. They are the proverbial Praetorian guards.
Let me restate the
surround
question. They have more intel than Mattis does.
Yes.
They have more intel than Mattis does.
Yeah,
when's the last time you and Mattis spoke?
Oh my gosh, I bumped into him in the hallways of the Pentagon when he was Secretary of Defense, and I think I might have injured his leg at one point by mistake. It's embarrassing story. don't want to go there.
Why not? You went there.
What happened?
I was God, I don't think I've ever told the story.
You went there.
I was briefing one of the seniors there in the Secretary's suite. Believe it or not, on ATIP, we were having one of our weekly briefings on it, and I said, "Okay, great, see you, Lou. Great, see you next week. Fine." And as I open up the door, something hits me like a brick wall, and I actually my reaction was to be angry. Like, who the hell has the audacity to be running down the hallway of the Secretary's suite? Like, seriously, who the hell are you? Who do you think you are? And the guy just did a face plant and papers went everywhere. And I looked down and I'm thinking to myself, God, the only guy who has even an excuse to do that would be like the Secretary himself. Wouldn't that be something? And as I looked down, it's Mattis.
You're kidding me.
No. And he looks up at me and you could hear a pin drop and everybody in the suite was like, oh. I'm like, oh my God. And he looks at me, he's like, Lou. I think I said something. I think I said either Greenland or Alaska. And he's like, huh? And I said, yes, sir. If you're thinking about reassigning me, I prefer Greenland over Alaska. And for like a week later, he'd be on CNN and Fox News, and he's going to meet the Chinese, and he's walking with a limp. And I'm like, oh my God.
That's so fun. He gives me the vibes. He gives me interesting vibes of a man's man who is, some of the greatest quotes about him, things he said in war.
Super intellectual, by the way. Also one of the smartest men, absolutely there.
We had him at our event. We had him speak at one of our events, annual convention.
He is one of 5 people on this planet that if they said, put your boots on, called me at 4 a.m, said, put your boots on, we're going to war, I would do it. He's, bar none. He's an incredible human being. I've seen what he can do in the Middle East. I saw what he could do in Afghanistan. The guy is absolutely everything they say he is and more.
What's his level of interest in UFOs and unidentified objects?
Couldn't tell you. Remember, I didn't brief him. I didn't get to brief him. His tier
That's
below
crazy.
him was briefed on a regular basis. But I left the Pentagon after that. I left. I resigned.
Okay, so why is it that the last few years it's almost as if they want this information to be leaked? They want us to talk more about it. You're hearing, people getting up there doing hearings. Who was that one fellow that did the hearing and you never saw him again, and he saw him and you didn't see him again?
Dave Grush.
Dave Grush, yeah. What are your thoughts on Dave Grush?
He's absolutely an American hero. I know him personally. I worked with him. I had the privilege of working with him. He was part of the UAP task force. Stellar individual, and he is everything he says he is. And by the way, he knows a hell of a lot more, but he can't talk about it. People were giving him flack for saying, "Oh, it's all secondhand, third-hand information." No, he's got some first-hand information, but he's not allowed to talk about it.
I definitely
the guy
believe
really,
that.
and they ran this guy through the ringer. Within 24 hours of him coming out and having this conversation with the American people and testifying before Congress, they tried to do what they did try to do to me. They tried to ruin his career and try to ruin his reputation by saying someone leaked some medical records about him and just really nasty stuff. And this is that part of the retribution that makes a lot of whistleblowers now that want to come forward not want to come forward. And this is why Congress is pushing so hard now for new legislation to protect people so they can come forward and have these protected conversations without worrying about somebody in Uncle Sam doing something nasty to them.
What's the worst thing they can do to you?
Yeah, I did take about 3 seconds, yeah.
Probably don't want to go there. They can do a lot.
Well, aside from the ultimate, but what's the worst thing they can do to you?
Well, that's pretty bad, right?
They
that's I can tell you for point blank that I was explained that some of the tactics and techniques to keep people quiet is to remind them what happened to the Rosenbergs, under national security. People say, "Oh, well, the government can't kill you."
They have killed people. I know that they have. So, they could have killed him, or stuff. They do kill people sometimes. They used to do it. That's how they used to do things until, recently with the whistleblower stuff. Only a few people did. No reason why they let some people talk is because nobody believed them. They all thought that they were crazy and insane. You had mainstream news talk to people that worked on secret programs, secret weapons, and stuff like that. You'd have, they'd get no media attention from mainstream news. None. And, they'd be mocked, ridiculed, and called crazy, and liars, and stuff like that. And the government has a hand in what is broadcast on mainstream media as well. They have a big hand in what is broadcast.
To protect a secret. Oh, absolutely.
I believe David Grush. Was it him? It might have been him. Where he had to go to a psychiatric hospital for a little bit. I did too. I've been in psychiatric holes stuff because of my experiences and everything, and how people said I was crazy and everything. So I understand that. So.
I mean, go to Area 51 and look at the signs on the chain link fence that says lethal force authorized if you cross over this line. They do have that authority to do things like that, and people need to be aware of that. And when you're talking national security interests and issues, you got to pay attention to that. That's why I'm very, very careful with what I say. What happened with the Rosenbergs, especially his wife, was a tragedy. He was working for the Russians and selling secrets, but the wife was pretty much innocent. And there's a whole story behind that I won't get into here. But look, we haven't, if you want to know, when people say, well, the government's always honest, all I got to say is Pentagon Papers, Afghanistan withdrawal.
Who says government's always honest?
Well, a lot of people think, oh, the government's not going to lie to you. And it's like,
there are.
Well, who actually says that? I think the government has the lowest trust score since 1963,
That's
62.
Right.
They're the lowest.
That's right.
The American people do not trust the government today. Right there, it's the lowest score. Since pre-Kennedy.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that, right? Because
good luck getting into one of those places. I mean, hey, if you can do it, just be careful. You know what I'm saying? Just be careful. Watch your back. Watch your back. That's what I'm telling you.
We tell the American people one thing, and then we find out later on that the government's lying to you. And it was the same thing with this UAP topic. And I think, we've as a government, we've backed ourselves into a corner over the decades. And now we're trying to find a way out.
I'll give
And
you a high five and everything.
I am
You
for
have
that.
to
I
do
want
so.
constructive dialogue. If it was up to me, I know there's a lot of people that want their pound of flesh and say, well, we should, pitchforks and torches, and whoever was keeping this secret, we need to put him in jail. I think the opposite. I think you give him an award, you pat him on the back, say thank you for your support to national security, but the time has come for us to change the conversation and have disclosure.
Do you think there's such a thing as globalists?
Oh, sure.
Yes, of course.
So do you think the New World or the globalists or what Klaus Schwab is doing, do you think those motives are there?
Well,
yes.
when you say globalists, there's different interpretations of that. There are
Yes.
people who have a global view, and they conduct business as such. There are no borders, so to speak, in their business model. Is there a secret cabal of people that are trying to control world governments? I don't know. That
Yes,
to me is.
You didn't say I don't think so. You said I don't know.
No, I don't know. I
Okay,
don't know. Is
got
it possible? Look, the problem is this topic already has a lot of stigma associated with it. I've already been called a conspiracy theorist, even though I'm not. I'm a scientist. My background is science, and I was an investigator.
Parasite, right? You said what did you study?
Microbiology, immunology, and parasitology, the study of parasites.
Right. That's when you were talking about plant,
Yeah.
man, fungus.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So the reason why I asked that is because for me, when I call around and I talk to friends, and I say, so let me ask you, what do you think about Grush? Okay. What do you think about, Lou Elizondo? What do you think about this? What do you think about Stephen Greer? What do you think about that guy? What do you think about this guy? So you're doing your regular thing to want to do an interview and be a little bit more prep for it. Here's what conclusion I come up with. Nobody knows what the real answer is. On one end, it's like, okay, when you started talking about this, and your wife, I think, you guys are being interviewed by News Nation, if I'm not mistaken, and your wife was talking about the fact that she had to work at Target at one point.
Oh, yeah.
You guys were living in a trailer home at one point. You got two girls, you're trying to do your thing with your family and kind of have your life afterwards, and you're trying to do your part as a patriot.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's tough to kind of listen to that, right? When your wife is talking about what happened between the two of you guys with your life. So two, one hears this and says, no, this is real. This is what's going on. This is actually accurate, what they're talking about. This is exactly what they, experience and witness, and they're doing their best to be great patriots, so we know about it. Great. Three is, is there a part of this which is kind of like the, forget about the military-industrial complex, forget about the climate change, industrial complex, or there's so many industrial complexes. How about the Space Force industrial complex? This is the one thing that people don't know a lot about, right? So if the government wanted to gaslight and find a way to create fear porn for people to be controlled for the next generation that would be willing to give permission to the government to come up with new laws and new ways to control people, this is a great fear porn to use. This is how much do people know about climate change? Well, they're getting a little bit more and more educated about it, where the $30 trillion request by AOC and some of our peers, I don't know if we're going to do that. You're going to, for what? For this much of a temperature? It is what it is, right? Even people on the left are like, no, we're not going to do something like this. This is ridiculous. But this one here, this is a unique one, because if you really play up the fantasy of man wanting to believe that aliens exist, they're watching us, they're doing what they're doing, it's so easy to do because, look, the planet is so big.
And one thing that I've noticed with Lou Elizondo is that on another news media sites where he's been, there's some stuff that he talks about. It's like you go different places, he'll talk about other stuff they didn't talk about here. Go on another site, another place, he's talking about something else as well. So, if you ever heard him after so many times, you can put some of the things together they didn't talk about here, he talks about somewhere else. So, hold on just a second. Hold on. Sorry, I had to get some stuff out from my nose and everything. Honestly, it makes me cough and everything else. So, one reason I have this weird voice.
Here's what we found. There's another living, such and such, and here's what's going on, and they're watching us, and this is why we need real money, and we need to get U.S. and everybody else to come together. This is becoming a world issue, because if they attack us, so then one will be like, that's right, we have to become globalists, and we have to make this a, borderless society and all this other stuff. If that 5% chance that that's the case, oh my God, this is one of the best fear porns you can use. Because the ultimate last one is what? It's real. There's aliens. And by the way, I come from the school of thought of, the math. We had Dave Kipling on, Rob. How long ago was that?
3 weeks.
3 weeks ago, right? And he's built, he's going to see this, a telescope that he's going to, they're doing what they're doing. I asked him, hey, what do you think exists out there? You think there's something out there? I believe we have the math to say we don't know. So if 95, 98, 99% of the stuff, we don't know what's out there, what makes you think you know?
I need to do this again. Shout out to PBD Podcasts, Peter Beth David, and stuff like that. He did this and everything. Of course, I'm doing this for fair use, with my own experiences, stuff like that, and conversation, etc. And he put out legal and everything, so that's good.
That it doesn't exist. You have to put the percentage of saying there's very high likelihood that maybe something does exist. Maybe there is life out there. Maybe there is aliens out there. Maybe there is all of that stuff out there, right? Okay,
like
great.
That to tell
but
me.
my God, this will be the ultimate fear porn, Space Force, industrial complex to get funding, to get more money, more taxes, because God forbid if something happens. I think many of the big governments with social media need the next big thing that they can control people with. This is definitely qualifies as a pretty good candidate.
Right.
Well, Russia and China have already admitted they have their own UAP program. And countries in South America for decades, their governments have already acknowledged government-sponsored UAP, UFO programs. So it would be really hard for me, because when we say fear porn, I think of, well, what scares me more than that is, Russian space capabilities. I'm not going to get into them here, but that to me is going to bring a lot more money than a UAP program. The UAP program we have right now is woefully unfunded compared to other
I'll
capabilities.
get into it. The Russians have the same capability, space forcing, space forces and stuff like that we do. And stuff, and having liaisons in space or whatever. They got that too. China has that as well. You can damn well bet that they got stuff on the moon going, stuff on Mars as well. There's plenty of stuff to be mined, all these different places as well. So the Russians, we have Star Wars. My father worked in some Star Wars SDI stuff as well. You damn well know the Russians are on that, the Chinese are on that, with Star Wars stuff in space. So if there is an ETs out there, they got assets, military assets in space, including defense systems to use against extraterrestrial craft as well. They got their own stuff.
That we have. And also, let's look at it this way. You have former Director of National Intelligence, Ratcliffe, and you have former Director of CIA, Brennan, and even a former President of the United States, all coming out and saying, yeah, there's something to this. Yep.
I had an article, I had some stuff on China building the biggest underground base on the earth. China's building right now, supposedly, the biggest underground base in the world, China is. I forgot where it was. It's on my phone. It's on my phone. I invite people to look it up when they can. After this, of course. But you got that. You can bet damn well that they have all these different things in space technology and stuff.
You got to take this seriously, right? And it's on both sides. It's both Democrat and Republican. So I don't think you're ever going to get a consensus on both sides to manipulate or deceive the American people. I think that is just, I think it's a bridge too far. You would have to exercise such control.
I don't. One thing I'm pretty sure is not talked about on here is the special, like maglev rail lines that we have between these bases, underground bases that we have. Let's see, what are they? Magnetic, and stuff like that. How we could get stuff back and forth at hyper speed and stuff like that. We got a lot of stuff. In other countries, they got their own tech and everything else. So.
And hope that nothing goes wrong to execute a disinformation campaign like that. It would almost be mind-boggling, the amount of coordination and conspiracy. And when you look at historically that we have the reports going back to the 50s of these things doing 13,000 miles an hour. We had just broken the Mach 1 the speed of sound, and these things doing 13,000 miles an hour in low Earth atmosphere on radar, multiple radars tracks. We see it. That means we started this campaign, 60, 70 years ago? That doesn't make sense. Plus, you have people that we have them on gun camera footage. It's not fake footage. It's real, right? So, I can't subscribe to that. Now, is it possible? Look, anything's possible. Absolutely, it's certainly possible. You can't say it is impossible, but the likelihood is, I think, is so unlikely. I think it's preposterously unlikely that would be the case. I just don't see it. I don't see how you could coordinate something like that.
Yeah, I just think again, the government, many of them, the people that don't even the ones that have more intel than Mattis and don't want to tell Mattis everything, they look at the people as kids, right? It's like it's kids. They don't know what they're doing. Like even parents in a household. You got 2 kids.
That I agree with.
You got 4 kids. Kind of like, listen, hey, my nanny, she's pretty much the kid's grandma because she's been in our house for 15 years. But she would say, you better eat this food or else coyotes coming. There is no coyotes coming. We live on an island. There is no coyotes coming, right? So coyotes coming. Oh my God, coyotes are coming, right? And it's like, but it works. But it doesn't work at 12. It doesn't work at 10. But at 10 or 12, daddy's coming still works, right?
Right.
But it doesn't work at 18 because you're out, you're in college. Who gives a shit, right? So then you have to come up with, hey, you better do this or else, Armenians would say, if you don't finish your plate and clean it up, your wife's going to be ugly. Who the hell says something like that? But it's so effective. Right. What man wants their wife to be ugly? So guess what? You eat and clean up your entire plate. What an effective way to do it. So I know this is funny, but the government looks at people and says, you guys are idiots. You guys are so dumb and naive. It's so easy to control you guys. So
this is the problem I have. Exactly what you're saying.
That's exactly what
this is the issue with this, not just this topic, anything else where somebody in government is making a unilateral decision.
That's what sociopaths do. They say that you guys don't need to know this. This is only for us big kids to know about, us parents and stuff like that. This is a need to know basis. This is what sociopaths and psychopaths do. Especially when they're making money off of this stuff and weaponizing all this stuff. And they don't want us to utilize this and become enlightened by it. It's that they're going to say, this is for your own good. This is for your own good. You don't need to know about this. This is for us big people to know about, not you little people and everything. That's the government.
Not to inform the American people because they can't be trusted or because they can't handle the truth or any nonsense like that. That's the nail on the head. That is what drives me to do what I'm doing because of that type of behavior by certain people in our government. Right. And by the way, it's not everybody. There's a lot of really good patriots in there, men and women in uniform that have literally in some cases died for this nation. So I don't want to, with a broad stroke, paint everybody the same color on the palette. But we've got a problem, and we can see it all the time. Look, there was this one congressperson there who had, $500 million in gold from corruption that he's been sucking away for how many years, and they've been trying to go after him over and over and over again. I mean, we've got a problem. And for me, is this The reason why they get away with it because our government
gatekeepers,
is
yeah.
so successful, our country, and it's so rich that a couple corrupt people can be corrupt, and the system doesn't get affected that much because there's so much wealth. The
Like
problem
I
is,
said, I love the country, but I believe a lot of the government needs to be destroyed. When I say that, is that there's too much government, there's too much corruption, and a lot of the guys that I know from the mob, they say that the government now is run by a mafia. It is. And they are being paid from donors. We have politicians that are being paid to vote a certain way, do things a certain way, to have an agenda a certain way from their donors as well. Both sides do this, Democrats and Republicans and everything like that. And there's this corruption that's run by like a mafia. And they're taking our tax money, our tax dollars, and they're not doing what they're supposed to in protecting us. They're doing the will of the people. They want more things of a dictatorship, I believe. So
is when more and more and more people do it, you reach a critical mass. And then, now the plane is too heavy to fly. Then you start coming down in altitude, and eventually you hit the ground. So, your point that you're making right now is exactly what drives me. This is exactly why I do what I do.
Yeah, but there's a part of it you have to ask both questions. Are the people naive? Are they dumb? Can they handle it? Can they not handle it? You got to ask both sides, right? Because sometimes with kids, can the kids handle everything? Should they know everything? My dad used to say, don't argue in front of the kids because kids shouldn't worry about the future at 8 years old, 6 years old. And, my mom and dad would argue, and it's like, no, we have to argue privately, not publicly, right? Some of the things I can see that they need to be doing their day-to-day stuff because if they worry too much, they may not go on and get things done. But I also don't think that keeping stuff away from a Mattis or a president and all that stuff. By the way, do you think we landed on the moon?
I do.
You do?
I'm
pretty
dead
sure.
not sure. Yeah.
You're not 100% of it.
I know.
Again, there's always room for error, right? But
I know
what
some
I've
of these
seen,
guys,
I have
I
an
know
unfair
they-
advantage. I have family that were actually part of
The thing with the moon landing, I've done videos on the moon landing and stuff like that, is that we had some stuff filmed in advance. A big problem with the moon is that we were followed by UFOs everywhere. And there's some stuff, it's like, if we have to have this scene done, we got this here on NASA stage as well. But yeah, they were there. They were definitely there. I know these guys, they wouldn't lie and stuff like that. They wouldn't do that and everything. And they didn't want scenes of UFOs following these vehicles. They were doing it all the time. They were all swarming, and everything. Our vehicles when we were on the moon and stuff. It's very hard to have anything shown because of what was going on the moon with the UFOs and everything. And so these other stages that we had were put there in just in case we had to put on a fake and everything. And that's what secrecy does. Why not just tell people that we're not alone in the universe? They could have done that. They didn't. People, they would have to have the stupid secrecy or anything, or have stages set up or whatever. So.
the development and early development of the Apollo missions, and there's, I've got original photographs from NASA back from the early 70s that were taken from those missions. So I'm a little bit unfair to ask me simply because, I've seen the compelling evidence that suggests, yes, we were absolutely on the moon. But can I say conclusive? No, I wasn't on the moon.
Have you watched the movie Fly Me to the Moon?
I have not. But I am aware of it. And I know that there's some pretty interesting stuff in their conclusions that show that maybe, some folks think some of that stuff was fake.
I mean, do you think the government funds movies?
Of course they do.
Okay, so this qualifies for a movie that the government would fund, because whatever you do you have a flight? Are you flying back home, or you go? Okay, can you make this the movie to watch on your phone or the iPad?
Sure.
I just want to get your thoughts on this.
Sure.
Because can you just go to the Wikipedia? I don't even know what they say. I just want to know how they paint this movie as. Okay, I want to read the plot. Okay, go up a little bit just to read the plot. Okay, in the 1968, advertising executive Kelly Jones is offered a high-stakes job by Mo Burkus, a covert government operator working for President Richard Nixon. He tasks her with the revitalizing NASA's public image amidst the wanting interest in the space race under threat of being exposed for her deceptive past. Kelly reluctantly agrees and moves to Cocoa Beach, Florida, with her loyal assistant Ruby. Upon arriving, Kelly encounters Cole Davis, the series and principal launch director at Kennedy Space Center. They immediately clash over Kelly's unconventional methods to boost NASA's public appeal, including corporate sponsorships and hiring actors to portray scientists. Despite their differences, they begin to develop a mutual respect and attraction. As NASA prepares for its historic Apollo 11 mission, Kelly suggests broadcasting a moon landing using a television camera on the lunar excursion model, a proposal Cole dismisses as impractical. However, Mo secretly endorses the idea and reveals an additional shadowy directive to Kelly. She must prepare a fake moon landing to be aired if the real mission fails. A project codenamed Artemis. Mo pressures Kelly into creating this falsification by threatening to expose her less than honest past, as she has skillfully reinvented herself. Being skilled at her job, she arranges that a very talented.
That's the thing with law enforcement, people in government, they have natural, qualified immunity that, us ordinary people don't have, and sometimes, sometimes it can be good, but most of the time, I don't think that law enforcement, government officials, because they get away with murder, they get with all these crimes and lying to us. Both sides, they always lie to us, and they got that immunity, from fraud and all this other crimes. And other stuff. Whereas the people, us normal people, we'd be thrown in jail or prison in some ways. We don't have that, natural, qualified immunity. They do.
A virtually unknown director come on board, finding the most isolated airplane hangar on the base. If it is heavily guarded, everyone involved is sworn into secrecy.
Like I said,
it's a true story. So, I mean, they make a movie to say the fact that the real mission made it, and if it didn't, the one right next to it, because a cat walked to the moon landing, and God forbid if they would have used it, it would have shown that there's a cat on the moon. Okay, this is the story what they're pitching. I walked out of this movie. We watched this in the Hamptons for like 20 of us, family, friends. We were there for Christmas. We were there for summer.
The dogs,
and I said, hey man,
kittens.
if this was the government's job of trying to convince us that theory that the moon landing was fake, you just screwed everybody up. This is not a movie the government wants people to watch. Okay, and it's Scarlett Johansson and Channing Tatum are in it. So I don't know, man. I was 60-40, we landed. After this, I was like, I don't know. This is 30-70. I don't think we did.
Well, look, there is a history of our intelligence community using Hollywood to do certain things. There was a movie not too long ago about the Iranian hostage situation, where television crew went in, which was actually, I guess, co-sponsored by real CIA operatives.
You talking about Argo?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so, we do have a history of using the media. In fact, we're still doing it. It was part of the campaign initially when I first came out to try to discredit me. There are people in the media right now that are being used by certain elements in the government and in the Pentagon to put...
That's fine. I mean, if people agreed with me on everything, I'd be very scared for the person, to be honest. That sounds crazy, but I would. But, I mean, that's fine. If people disagree with me on stuff, that's fine. As long as they agree with me on some stuff, and if you're subscribed to me, then of course you have to agree with, I think you should agree with me on some things, I don't care if people don't agree with me on everything. It's just, if you don't like what I say or what I do on certain things, don't watch it, or unsubscribe if you're going to make things bad. You know what I'm saying? But the stuff that we do agree on, enjoy that content. And if you don't enjoy some of the content that I do, don't bother to watch it. Don't bother to come in and just leave a dislike. Just don't go and watch it or whatever. You know what I'm saying? There's gonna be stuff me and other people agree and disagree on. That's the way that we all are. All of us, most of us are going to agree and disagree on certain things with other people as well. So I mean,
Put out disinformation, and that is a fact. That is absolutely true. And unfortunately, you even see it with your own Wikipedia right now. But look, Wikipedia is just a bunch of editors. Some of these folks can put all sorts of stuff up there, and it's not always accurate.
It's interesting you bring this up because my dad's sister, Ellen, was at the embassy when this happened. When the revolution happened, she was at the embassy trying to escape, and my dad pulled up with it. So when we watch Argo, some of the people that play, they're playing my aunt, my dad's sister, who, very weird you brought this up, she passed away yesterday.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's my dad's last sibling that didn't make it yesterday. God bless her soul. My dad's in a lot of pain. But yeah, Argo was a movie we watched that, when you watch it, it's Iran, the whole, we're going to make this movie and we're doing this and we're doing that and finding a way to get rid of some of the people. But yeah, I don't know. When I watch this movie and I watch some of the stuff that's being said and some of the stories and the punching in the face, we'll put your hand on the Bible that we landed on the moon, boom. There's a lot of weird things with that part. But did you ever read that book? Maybe if you didn't, we can just move on. Did you ever read the book, Who Built the Moon?
I did not.
Okay, it's interesting. I thought maybe a guy like you. By the way, on another topic here, I'm just curious to know now where you're wired and what some of your beliefs are.
Careful.
I'm going to see what you're going to say. 9/11. What do you think happened with 9/11?
Well, people will say it was a terrorist attack, but the real failure was our fault. We had information within the CIA and information with the FBI and information within the DOD, and we weren't sharing it with one another. 9/11 happened because we didn't do our job. We had enough information potentially to stop those attacks. And because of these proverbial rice bowls, if you will, these little fiefdoms within the government, no one wanted to share information with one another. A very good friend of mine,
bureaucracy,
named Chris Mellon, from the famous Mellon family, right? So Carnegie Mellon and Mellon Bank, Mellon University, right? He incredible intellect. You should have him on your show. He's incredibly brilliant. He worked on a senior staffer in the Senate, then became a senior intelligence official for the Department of Defense. He said the reason why we won the Cold War wasn't because we kept better secrets. Okay, Russians did that. We knew how to move information around more efficiently and faster. So it wasn't that we kept information more classified. We knew how to use it and get it to the right people to do something with it. And 9/11 happened because we forgot that. We forgot. We started getting back into our ways of this is my information and I'm going to keep it to myself and need to know. This is why there was.
I don't like the Patriot Act. I don't like the surveillance, all stuff, because you have two sociopaths, the psychopaths that like to monitor everything that we do over other countries and everything. The thing is, if they would have done their job, we wouldn't need stupid Homeland Security, we would need all these other organizations, taking tax dollars, taking more tax dollars, spending more government money, etc. We wouldn't need all that if they would have done their job.
A pendulum swing the opposite right after 9/11 from need to know with responsibility to provide. And unfortunately, that pendulum swung so far that it allowed, unfortunately, people like Snowden and Manning.
Does that say it all? If it was us, just the normal folk, just as everyday people, we'd be trash canned. We'd be trash canned. People would know about us. Nobody would hire us or anything. But these other people, there's no accountability. no accountability. It just
Private Manning to leak classified information because it made it too easy, right? So then now the pendulum kind of swings back towards the middle. Now it's just need to know with responsibility to provide, and it's kind of this, you have to balance both out. But that was right after 9/11. So I think what happened with 9/11 is that we failed as a government to work with one another.
Yeah. So Building 7, what they say, the explosive, that stuff, you don't subscribe to any of that.
I don't. I think, I worked with the original, it was John Lipka, the first FBI special agent. He did I think the original 93 investigation when they tried to blow up the tower the first time with a car bomb in the basement. He was a special agent in charge for the FBI. And I met him in Denver. And, it was clear to me that this was a symbolic target for a very long time. It wasn't just,
it was.
I mean, they've been looking for a while
It was.
to make the World Trade Center a target, a terrorist target.
That was good.
And so I don't really subscribe to any type of
94.
anything other than that this was a successful terrorist attack, unfortunately.
Yeah, we had this guy on the podcast a couple of years ago. His name was Richard Gage, and he was part of the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. I think it's like 3,000 of them, some big number. It wasn't a small number. The interview was taken down. And a week later, 4 days later, they took down the interview. Not sure why, but they took down the interview. And we were pushing back, and he was saying this is what happened, and YouTube didn't want that to stay up. It was taken down. So, okay, let me ask you another question. Stephen Greer, what are your thoughts on Stephen Greer?
I don't know him. So I don't ever usually have an opinion on anybody. I never talk about anybody if I haven't had a chance.
This is the thing. If you don't like somebody, sometimes you say, I don't know him, never heard of him. You dismiss them just like that. Never heard of them. It's significant. They're not there. I saw what he did there. Yeah.
Just meet them personally.
So I had him on for the second time 2 months ago. And are you familiar with Sean Ryan, podcaster Sean Ryan? Mm-hmm. He had Greer on. Rob, can you pull up that one clip? Because this is the part where it's kind of like,
I think I'm aware of it. I know the one you're going to show.
Yeah, there's a couple of them. I want to show this one here to you. I want to see what you're going to say about it. Go ahead.
When you're talking about these disinformation agents, these knocks, I have somebody that comes to mind, and we were talking about him at lunch. Lou Elizondo. Is he one of them?
Oh, of course. I mean, as soon as he emerged on the stage, I had a very senior guy at CIA who's worked this issue since.
I think the reason why I get pissed off about this is because he's putting out disinformation too. He's no better saying that ETs are all good and everything. That's not true. That's a lie. And for him, say like, hey, trust me, I know everything, I know this. I was having UFO experiences before he went into any form of government and stuff like that, before he knew what he supposedly knew. I know he knows a lot of stuff. I know that. Okay, I know he knows a lot of real stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that's put out, disinformation about. And not all ETs are good. Some are bad. It's just like humans are. Okay? That's the way that it is. Elizondo could definitely be a plant. Anybody could say he'd be a plant. But I know there's some stuff that he says is true as well. There's some stuff I know that he's saying, that Greer's saying is true too. I don't trust him at all because I know stuff that I know. From personal experience. So.
1979, contact me about that problem. But remember, the only way that you can control at this point all this coming out because of what we have and what we're pushing forward through media is to control the narrative, the spin. So the people coming forward who get an all-access pass on to, say, 60 Minutes or something like that, or people cleared by this same illegal, corrupt organization because they'll tell the public, yes, the UAPs are real, but we don't know what they are. Well, this is an absolute lie. We absolutely know what they are. Some of them are ours, man-made. and are confused quite frequently with the others, which are of extraterrestrial origin, or ETVs, extraterrestrial vehicles.
Right.
And those operatives are taught very well to take an issue, grab it, capture it, and then spin it in the direction that they want. Now, the direction they want is endless ambiguity. Gee, we don't know what they are. We don't know what they are. It's nonsense. We've proven what they are. Well, you know, I have 755 whistleblowers.
You have 755 whistleblowers?
I mean, this archive is unbelievable.
You had mentioned that you...
What do you think about what he says? Because
Well, where are the whistleblowers? And I'll tell you, isn't he the same guy? They wrote an article
You
about.
can say about both people. Both are right and wrong at the same time. You know, both are right, both are wrong. I mean,
if I'm not mistaken, who apparently was accused of taking people on a tour and then paying some dude to pay, like $500 to drop flares out of a Cessna. Is that the same guy?
I don't know that.
I think there was an article.
These people pay
You
for
can.
stuff.
I think it was done by the debrief. I think. Anyways, you know, my mom always told me if I have nothing
said
kind
he
to say,
didn't
don't
know,
say it at
but-
all. So, I've never met the man, but you know, look, it's nonsense. I don't know what to tell you, man. I mean, look, where are the whistleblowers? You know, when I went to the IG, you know, and had my conversation, I didn't see any of them. You know, I know the ones that we talk to. We go to Congress and we talk to Congress. I haven't seen him.
This is
Yep,
the one you're talking about?
that's it.
Likes to suggest that he is a regular contact with extraterrestrials. Can I kindly in a person begins to document close encounters of the fifth kind, but is really contact with them? Well, the U.S. military, I'm very confident UFOs are unknowns, not belonging to China, the U.S. or Russia. He said, I'm not convinced that these objects with career scene. Tuition fee, some of that's week-long tuition for $2,500 to $3,500. Back in January 27, when Career Expedition claimed to have summoned 2 UFOs, the video of sightings was posted to Career's YouTube channel, and this incident was first close listed on the photographic and the video evidence.
I've never met the man.
To document close encounters.
Let's see. The date saw Greer lead expedition at Vero Beach on Florida's east coast, where they've had UFO stuff before. Greer's website says that his week-long expeditions come with a tuition fee of $2,500 to $3,000, depending on facility costs. Everybody needs to make money. I get that. But it seems like only for celebs, high-powered people, celebs. There's something wrong with the cost here to me. Again, people gotta make money. But $2,500 to $3,500, I don't know. Right? Yeah, he did say something. Yeah. I mean, there is a way for us to sometimes summon them. That there is ways of any one of us to do that, though. There are ways to do that. You don't have to pay all this exorbitant amount of money to do it, though. You have to have more of an open mind and everything. So
Close encounters of the fifth kind, but is really contact with them? Well, the U.S. military, I'm very confident UFOs are unknowns, not belonging to China, the U.S. or Russia. He said, I'm not convinced that these objects with career scene. Tuition fee, some of that's on week-long tuition for $2,500 to $3,500. Back in January 27, when Career Expedition claimed to have summoned 2 UFOs, the video of sightings was posted to Career's YouTube channel, and this incident was first close listed on the photographic and the video evidence. But where's the one with the flares? Go a little lower, Rob, to see if you find it. Night scopes. Just Control F flares. So I'm looking for night.
I gotta say, in his defense, I have to defend Greer. I have to. The reason why sometimes you do that, put lights up in the sky, stuff like that, to get their attention, and stuff like that. They know when you're trying to communicate with them. A lot of the time, you have to do that sometimes to get their attention. Well, they know you're there already. They know that. But for them to do a peekaboo and strobe their light and communicate, light up, stuff like that, wait, no trails, wait, I'll look at nice. If it starts bright light, hearing participant, please turn off. Okay, drop. So the after light appears refers not. These are indeed UFOs. I'm looking with night scopes. There's no smoke, no trails. These are not flares, but I'm just saying. Sometimes you have to use. There are different ways to get their attention. Sometimes they don't care. Yeah, that's true. Summoners, yeah, they want to make money off that. And I think what we're supposed to do, everybody, this goes against enlightenment in a lot of ways. I could make videos of idiot takes on an expedition to summon UFOs for $5,000, $3,000. And if I do something like that, I'd put idiot there because it'd be stupid to do that. And the thing is, we're all supposed to do this together as a human race, as humans. We are supposed to teach each other enlightenment and stuff. And sometimes you have to be careful, though, not to get the wrong ETs summoned. You need to be careful with that. You have to have the right mind as well, a peaceful, mind to do it as well. Okay, you have to be right mindset and everything. I don't always have that, but aliens can summon people. Can they summon they have ways to, if they wanted to, they could take control of our aircraft. If they wanted to, they could. Yeah, they've done it before. They've also shut down power systems, EMP, things, EMP. They could also make them go, they could, like a tractor beam. Like a tractor beam, they could also take control of it. Summoning them, you're talking about spiritual or technological ways. They can do that technological ways. I don't know if they'll do that in spirit ways. But yeah, they could do things. They could take control of stuff they wanted to, anytime they wanted to, and they have. Summoning them, that depends on what you consider, summoning them and taking control and distance, what distance and everything like that. I've had some pilots, seen stories of pilots where, their jet aircraft totally powers off. It's just around the whole, yeah.
Night scopes, there's no smoke, there's no trails, there are no flares. It continues, they're falling, they're waiting for us to arrive. A few seconds later, Greer implores us, let's welcome, and begins to join us into meditation. This is a beautiful color. You'll see, you'll never forget the color. This is huge. Yes, this is a major event. At 3 minutes and 32-second mark, the first light disappears, ignoring the light slow but obvious altitude declines. Greer states that they've stayed pretty much the same altitude, though. Let's invite them to come to us close. And I know that's gone into the ocean. Greer includes, now the way that that's not like something like a flare. So shoot up, but were these UFOs or were they something terrestrial?
Well, keep reading.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty compelling.
Flight-aware flight tracking data attained at Washington exam suggested that later is true. At 9:11 p.m., January 27, 2000, Beach 76 Duchess registered N110SU was recording flying at 85 miles off Vero Beach. This is lower than aircraft normal cruising speed. Would feasibly allow the air crew to deploy parachute flares or some other illumination device. The aircraft took off and returned to the airport, and Fort Pierce, the screenshots below showed the aircraft's location at the time of the event.
Flares. I remember
Owner of the aircraft is listed by
this.
Federal Aviation Administration as R.E. Ben Aviator Incorporated.
Ari
Sir
Ben
Fort Pierce.
Aviator.
When I reached out the aviator and flight and maintenance
He's like
supervisors
dropping
told me that the
flares
college
after
never
he
does
sees
things like
it.
dropping flares. After sending a spear,
MH370. That is something. We see stuff on Twitter, right? About these UFOs taking over and teleporting. I know that they could do that. I know UFOs could take a size craft and teleport it somewhere to infinity if they wanted to. I know they could do that. You know, I've had so many different stories where planes have disappeared, etc. Ashley Forbes. Yeah. Scared as shit. Scared as shit it is. And you ask the question, why the fuck did they do it? What kind of evil type of group? Like I said, there are bad ETs and there are good ones. There's good and bad ones, alright? And only go with everything that you know put together. Don't trust don't trust anybody. Don't trust me. Don't trust anybody. Do your own investigations. Yeah. And some of it isn't even technology. That's the thing. There's a reason why we call it magic. You know, in the classified documents, why we call it magic with a J is because it's magic and spirit stuff as well. I don't like us humans how the way to explain it is to say it's technology. But it's not, it's on a different level. This is a psionics, this is where psionics, psychic, and telepathy come into play, the mind, the spirit that we have, empowering this stuff a lot of the time, right? So what they got is like magic. It trumps technology and stuff like that. And yeah, whatever we got, as far ahead of us as they are, they could always be ahead of us. You know, think about that and everything. And they do have ways of teleporting. They can teleport stuff. Doesn't matter about so much the size and everything. You know what I'm saying? You know, my big question is, who the fuck did that? If that is real, right? If that is real. If that's real, it's like, who the fuck did that, right? What kind of evil type of beings or people or humans or beings or whatever did that? That's beyond evil, you know?
copy of the flight record. He did not respond to any further emails. Incidentally, another aircraft listed to RE was forced to land on section Interstate 95 on Florida on January 30th, 2017 after running out of fuel. CNN has also reported that RE received a loan of between $350,000 or $1 million under the federal government's coronavirus relief. Got it. Okay. So what's your point with this? You're saying that some of the stuff that he's doing, by the way, is that the video? Can we see it, Rob? Can you just play that? I just want to see what it looks like. Can you go to the flare part?
Orange object. Look up. Oh, whoa. Oh my Whoa, just don't pop
stand
too
up,
much.
please. Crouch down and look, because you'll block our cameras.
Yeah, those are
Wow.
illumination flares.
Those behind me may move and stand up, because
Well, what is he saying they are?
you see that color?
I don't know. I don't pay attention. I don't like I said. I don't
No,
know. I don't know the
no.
gentleman, so I
But
don't
I would
invest any time.
Okay, so
He doesn't want
so
to
to
see
me
it.
though, where I go with this is, I had him on twice, and I listened to. By the way, I don't know if you watched the documentary he did about the Invention Secrecy Act.
Lou doesn't even want to see it. It's like, fuck me, I don't want to see this.
Of 1951.
No, I don't watch his material.
Okay. In your world,
He has that reason
who is
to.
Stephen Greer or types like him in your world, in the military? How do folks look at someone like Stephen Greer?
We don't deal with him. ATIP was only focused on military encounters, and so as a civilian, I'd never met him. I don't know much about him, and I've never worked with the guy. I'm aware of his feelings towards me. He's certainly entitled to whatever feelings he wants, but proof is in the pudding. We got videos released. We've got Congress involved. We've got an Arrow now, an organization that's been established. We've got whistleblowers coming out. I don't know what to tell you. People are free in this country to do what they want, listen to who they want. It is a free country, and I encourage people to get all sides of the narrative. I will never tell anybody, don't talk to somebody. Go ahead. You want to? Be my guest.
And that's the problem with Stephen Greer, is that he's telling people, just listen to me, I have all the answers. That's bullshit. Nobody has all the answers. Only God Almighty himself would have all the answers and everything. He doesn't have all the answers, neither does Stephen Greer. We need to, do stuff ourselves, investigate ourselves, come to our own conclusions, if possible, and try to come to an understanding of all this. Don't take my word over anybody's either. I want everybody to learn themselves, find out stuff for themselves.
Yeah, you see, that's the part. That's the part for me where, as a viewer, you sit there, me, or anybody else that's watching this, you're like, oh, shit, who the hell do I believe? Do I believe the free market, private, somebody doing independent work? Do I trust the government that for many years they've lied to me? And
You don't believe anybody. You believe the data. This is the problem. When anybody gets up there and says, believe only me, that's a problem. You don't hear me saying that.
I agree. I agree.
What I think, it doesn't matter what Lou Elizondo thinks. What matters is what you think. Here's the data. My job is simple. Here's the data.
Right.
You figure it out yourself what it means to you. I'm not going to sit here and tell you weave some little narrative about, history. Look, here's the bottom line. You can analyze it yourself. There it is. You figure it out, right? So these are the facts behind it.
You figure it
X,
out.
Y, Z. Here's the videos. Here's FLIR footage. Here's the
Please let me
telemetry.
walk.
Here's the studying, the analysis that's been done. Here's the
You
radar
take the
returns.
ball.
Here's
Take
the
the ball.
eyewitnesses.
Run with it.
What else you want? That's up to you at that point. That's the problem I have with a lot of people out there who prescribe narratives, right? Like, oh, this person's a disinformation agent. Do you even know what that means? Have you ever held a security clearance? You have never been in any meetings I've been in, So this is my trouble I have with people. And this is why when people ask me my opinion, I don't really like to share it because I've learned one thing in the intelligence community. You can be absolutely sure of something and still be absolutely wrong. And that's important because I know
I can
my
be
own
absolutely
limitations.
wrong,
I'm the
anybody
first
can be
person to say,
absolutely
Lou,
wrong.
what do you think about this? You know what? Doesn't matter what I think. What
They
matters what
should be
you think.
implanted
Here's
in
the
our
data.
flipping heads.
And then you figure out what this means to you because this topic is a lot more like, people talk about, the military industrial complex and they're trying to, look, I don't want a general telling me how to feel about this topic. If it's a national security issue, great. If you're going to tell me how we're going to stop these things from interfering with our nukes or how to stop them from coming over our sensitive military installations, great. But this conversation is much bigger. It's a conversation that involves both the psychology and the sociology and the theology and the philosophy of human beings. Right. And maybe this conversation is better off talking to your priest or your imam or your rabbi, right? Or maybe your family around the table. I don't want some 2, 3, or 3-star general telling me what I should think about this. This is why I think transparency is so important. Because
who's the 2, 3-star general?
No, I'm just being what I'm doing. I'm kind of giving you a
hypothetical.
Right? That there's someone in the Pentagon and the government that say, well, people always say, well, how should we feel about this? Don't ask that question. That's sacred. Don't just give it away easily to somebody to tell you what the narrative is. Well, you figure that out.
Let's look at this. if somebody gives me data or you data, are you still going to trust that data? Because what if some of it's false, or what if that data comes out that some of it was fabricated or something, right? And knowing the government, I know from some people that some of these people that investigated UFOs and stuff like that, they were fed wrong information on purpose, some of it. And it was all a psychological experiment to see if they, would do something with it, what they do with it. It's honestly what a lot of this is psychological warfare. A lot of this is psychological warfare on an unparalleled level of what the governments are doing.
Yes, you're going to have to engage your brain. You're going to have to actually work that gray matter in there, but you'll be better off. Trust me. Don't be so quick to give up your ability to think. And that's my concern. By the way, this is not directed towards you. This is my argument when people ask me my opinion. As tempting as it is to tell you my opinion, of course I have an opinion. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, does it? What matters is what does the facts say? And then follow the facts, follow the data. That's how you get to a conclusion.
Well, the challenge is also when you have people from the government who, let's just say they have intel. And I remember one time I was part of a group called Vistage. I don't know if you're familiar with Vistage. Vistage is like the biggest CEO networking group. They got 15,000 members, and there's a chair, and each Vistage...
me personally, the way how government is lying, there's a lot of stuff that I'd say, they gave me stuff, and I've actually seen classified stuff before I have. Everything I know is real. I know it's real. I know it's classified until it's released later on that it was real. But I had being classified. I know it was. I had it and stuff like that. But this is the thing. Right. And me having that classified stuff that I had, I thought it was fake. Because that what is out there, trust nobody. And this also drove me insane and other people insane. It drives other people crazy too. When you can't trust anybody, you have to do your own investigating, right? Because somebody could feed you wrong information. You gotta have your back covered, your six. You gotta have your six covered. Watch your back. Look behind you. And everything. And I didn't know that was real until stuff was declassified. About some stuff about MJ-12, magic, other UFO stuff, and everything. I didn't know that. Now, for all I know, maybe there's a chance they could be fake too. Who knows? I don't know. But, I just say, you know what I'm saying?
Group has like 8 people in the group from 8 different industries. Anyways, and I was part of one, and every month you're supposed to host it at your office. So one day I'm hosting it at my office at Warner Center Marriott. Keynote speaker was one of the former directors of CIA or deputy directors of CIA. We're talking 2012, 11, timeline like that.
Well,
I'm not even creating content out of it.
You're right. We do need multiple perspectives. It's how we get investigations. We come with the right answers. This is how we get to the facts. Is that we get these multiple perspectives. We get the evidence together and get to the facts. You can't just trust one person. They're just human anyway. They have faults. They're mortals. You know?
I'm just a business guy. So he comes in, it's like, hey, you know, today's guest is such and such. I'm like, so what happened with this? Well, I can tell you this, but I can't tell you all because it's classified. What about this? It's classified. How about this? It's classified. How about this? Hour was gone. I'm like, what was the purpose of this guy
Didn't
being
tell you anything.
everything? I didn't learn nothing.
Right.
So sometimes when you're dealing with the guys from who are
They do
working
everything
for
behind
the
closed
government,
doors and
everything
said
eventually hits the wall because they say, well, that's classified. Well, that's classified.
So great
well, that's
point.
classified.
But you know, here's
all
the
bullshit.
problem. People don't realize there's laws out there, right? You classify something to protect sources and methods. It is illegal to classify information to cover up malfeasance or to save embarrassment to the United States government. It's illegal. It's in writing, and yet that's what happens. And most people don't even know.
Is it really?
It is absolutely. In fact,
What is it called? By the way, Rob, did you
What
know
was the
that?
law?
so type in this DOD directive.
shit.
Type in DOD directive.
Right.
And then type in classification. It's probably either classification system or it's classification guidelines. Classification guidelines. Yep. Now, pull up that DoD directive. The instruction on developing security. That might be it. What's the title of that? I have got terrible eyes. Security. There you go, guys. So if you scroll down a bit, you will see in there where it says you cannot classify information for the reasons of. So keep going, keep going, keep going. Let's see here. Procedures. Okay. Administrative change above. Keep going. Keep going. There we go. So let's see here. Consider related to determine the state of the other staff. When to declassify classification decisions. There you go. So go to page 9. Sorry, guys, in infinite wisdom.
I'm actually so interested in this. I can't even tell
Okay,
you.
so classification decisions, either originally or derivatively, blah, blah, blah. Keep going, scrolling down. Okay, keep going down. These are the things that we classify. Keep going down. It's getting close. Whoa. A little bit too far. Let me see, determine the specifics. There is a paragraph in here that says, type in.
Same. I have some ADD issues, and it can be hard for me to retain stuff, even more stuff now. Also because of meds I used to be on, it all fucked up my head and everything. Because psychiatrists thought I was crazy for believing UFOs and stuff like that. Anyways, yeah, that there's stuff that it has to be something really big for me to always remember. And stuff like that. There's to be stuff that I could miss as well. So, but
In the search word embarrassment, and it'll probably pull up right to it to the one of the prohibitions. Well, my eyes are
it's
terrible.
just memorandum information.
What? It's not allowing you to search?
Yeah, not in the actual document because it's a PDF.
Oh shoot! Okay, so if you do a word search,
Rob, send that link to me. If you can do me, what is the search called?
and there's also a DoD CIO directive as well that talks about you can't classify information specific. You know, I actually had a link on my phone. Doggone it!
Embarrassment. All right, let me see if I find it. Oh, there you go. I found it.
Excellent.
There it is. So, in no case shall information be classified in order to conceal violations of law, inefficiency, or administrative error to prevent embarrassment to person, organization, or agency, to restrain competition, or to prevent or delay the release information that does not require protection in the interest of.
There you go.
So then let me ask you though, how many times do they do it?
All the time.
Okay.
All the time.
Welcome to my world. This is exactly my point,
shit.
right? So,
Rob, I'm sending you the link.
American people have no idea this goes on all the time. This is why I'm
does.
doing what I'm doing. This is exactly the reason why, because people are making a unilateral decision to abuse that process simply for covering up something that they don't want the American people to know.
Rob, can you search exactly those words that's it right there, right? Can you zoom in a little bit so the audience can?
As much as people say that it could be a plant, and even myself say it could be a plant for military-industrial complex, he's also for getting rid of the bullshit as well. I don't like it being part of the military complex, national security. I hate that part. I want that destroyed and gone. But so this other stuff, like you said, it's complete bullshit. There is no reason to have all this stuff secret.
You can see it.
There's two sides.
Zoom
like
in.
There's two.
That's it right there. So section 1.6, limitations on classifications. Okay.
Sometimes I flip flop. I think honestly, sometimes people say I can flip flop too. I don't know.
So then this is what this does to me, Lou. It makes me think a lot of the stuff that the government, how many of these things that the government is hiding, like for example,
There is no case all information be classified in order to conceal violations of law, inefficiency, or administrative error, to prevent embarrassment to a person, organization, or agency, to restrain competition. That's what they do. They restrain competition too as well. Prevent or delay release of information. That's what they do. Does not require protection or interest of national security. Right. Yeah. I hear you.
do you think the government
I do.
isn't embarrassed on the fact that they know who assassinated John F. Kennedy? So if that's the case, doesn't this qualify on that same guideline that because of the lack of the embarrassing job that was done to protect and them being involved, they're so embarrassed that they don't want to leak it? Doesn't that qualify under this?
Yes. it does.
Well, it depends. If that is the real reason, yes, it absolutely does qualify. Now, if there's a reason because maybe there was a foreign asset that we were using as a spy to collect certain information, we're trying to
We're
protect
doing
that
that
source,
too.
that is protection of sources and methods.
Which one outweighs which one?
Well, you always have to protect sources and methods. National security always outweighs anything else.
So they can always use that card.
Yes, that's a
always
problem, right?
use
So
Trump
you can
card.
always say
Trump card.
something like, well, we're protecting sources and methods,
It's all
right? So, for
BS
example, a lot of the
you
videos
did.
people want to see, because there's some really good
You
videos
did.
that the government has. The government says, well, we're not going to release those because we're trying to protect sources and methods because the way the camera was and where we were
See,
flying
that's
over.
the part where
Because
civilians.
I'm
I'm a civilian now.
This national security risk. We can't add that out because the way he was standing, that's national security risk. We can't have that secret out. Berkeley has secrets out about the fact that he was brainwashed, used mind manipulation programs, brainwashing programs. That he had other assassins. We can't have that. Yeah.
It's 1999, right? I'm not in the service. This is why civilians get so annoyed with these types of methods
Bullshit.
where eventually you're like, look, man, am I going to ever find out about what happened here? Well, no, we can't, expose our source that gave us this information. And because of that, da-da-da-da-da.
It's all bullshit.
And so where guys like Stephen Greer and all the other ones on the private free market that go and try to do it on their own, and they bring all these other whistleblowers and whatever they want to call it that they find, they do it independently because these guys are not telling us shit anyways. Every time they're going to be like, I can't tell you. Well, at least on this side, these guys are trying to recruit whistleblowers that are going to come out and say certain things.
Yeah, no doubt that there's like organizations like MUFON, they do a good job. There's
MUFON,
organizations
yeah.
out there, private organizations,
MUFON?
Mutual UFO Network,
Independent.
independent. They're civilian organizations.
Highly credible.
Well, some are. Some,
Yeah,
it's, an
yeah.
organization is only as good as the people in it, right? Just like a
Right,
government or
yeah,
anything
that's
else
true.
or a company. So you've got some people that are really good. They have some really good investigators, and they collect a lot of information from average private citizens, right? And that can be corroborated. And you can look at law enforcement data and say, actually, you know what? There were 3 reports of people calling in at 11 o'clock at night of a UFO, And so they do a really good job with that. And I do think you're absolutely right. There's always a need for the private community to be part of this conversation. There are, there's also, I'll give you a perfect case in point right now. I'm working with some attorneys. Some of their names I can say. Some of them are still a little bit sensitive about it. But these are private citizens working to try to protect whistleblowers. So there's an organization right now, Danny Sheehan has one organization they're called the New Paradigm Institute. I have several attorneys with.
I think I might be able to tell you what he would say. I think he would say, like, why the fuck did I say that? And I think he said something that makes no sense. I believe he said himself at some point, he says, yeah, because other people have said it too, Somebody said to me, yeah, I get that. He goes, I do.
With me, one is named, they call him the Bull, Ivan Hanel. He's got a team of lawyers working with him, trying to figure out how do we protect people who want to come out of the shadows that may have been working these legacy programs and get them the protection they need so they can have the conversation with Congress, so they can have the conversation with the American people, maybe through, like we saw with David Grush, right? Maybe a public hearing or something like that.
He's your lawyer?
So Daniel Sheehan is, do you know his background? Let me give you.
Isn't he also Stephen Greer's lawyer?
He was Stephen Greer's
That's
lawyer.
That's the lawyer.
He is
That's
very much
that's a
involved in this
professional
topic.
lawyer.
He has a program called
he's a professional lawyer. If he represents both sides, that's a capitalist right there. That's a lawyer for you. Believe me, I know plenty.
Paradigm Institute, where they are looking to create a grassroots effort. And there's another one called UAP Disclosure Fund, which I'm on the board, which I help give them some advice and assistance once in a while to help try to give people the protections they need to come out. Another one, like I said, is the that's an organization, very interesting, also bipartisan. So you have
Independent, private, non-governmental.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So look,
Who does a better job, by the way?
there's no such thing as better. They're different. They're different focus areas, right? It's like to say, what tastes better, wine or beer? Well, it depends what mood you're in.
Well, no, the reason why I asked the question is because, like, who does a better job? PMCs or actual U.S. government, right? Military. Okay, would I rather have private military contractors, or would I rather have Army, Marines, Air Force, Navy, where the government taxes are being used to train the next level? There are certain things that you...
I think for this type of stuff, the military would be better because they're answerable to the U.S. government and to some oversight. I know personally, private military contractors do not have oversight. And that's why they use them at these secret bases, all these different bases, underground bases. Why they use PMCs? Because they don't have any oversight. It's like roads, Ronin, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Ronin, rebels, stuff like that. That's PMCs and everything. They're taught by military, former special forces, stuff like that. They have no government oversight. And so they can get away with whatever they want to do. The military, Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, etc., they're answerable to government and different laws, strict enforcement, so oversight by Congress and money. PMCs do not have that oversight.
You may say or make an argument of they do better. Okay, UPS, private, not even close, right? I'd much rather do private, FedEx, DHL than go trust the other way, right? In this specific topic, when it comes down to the level of curiosity with UAPs,
So
who's historically done better?
So great question. And it's not an either or. Okay, it's not a binary solution. It's not like they do better or they do better. It's not. It's two different focus areas. Let me give you an example. MUFON, for example, that organization, they are across the country in every state. They've got investigators, and they can go out if there is some sort of UFO sighting, and they can be boots on the ground within usually about an hour or two, right? So they can canvass a huge wide area. The U.S. military, we're around military bases. They're not going to go ahead and just cut off some folks from, Air Force Special Police or Army CID or MPs to go into the middle of downtown Detroit and start interviewing civilians. They don't even have the authority to do that, right? They're Title 10 authorities. So they don't have those authorities to even do that. They can only focus on the military equities, military contractors, military civilians, etc. So it's not that one is better than the other. In fact, some of the people, for example, in MUFON are former military investigators themselves. So they have all the same training as guys like me have, right? But they're civilians. Now, the problem is they don't have security clearances.
But PMCs don't have to follow those Title 10 the constitutional part where they're, by federal law, they have to go by federal laws. PMCs don't have to do all that. They're a different type of force.
Necessarily, so they're not going to get the super classified sensor data off a certain collection platform that we may be flying in a denied territory, right, where we happen to see a UAP in full 4 HD, 4K HD. They're not going to have that because that organization doesn't have the capabilities. They don't have the ability to task platforms. They don't have the authorities, and they don't have the security clearance. So it's apples and oranges. You can't say one is better than the other. What you can say is some have the ability to do some things where others have the ability to do something else. It's not really a one-for-one comparison.
Is it competitive or no?
No, actually, I think it's pretty symbiotic now, especially with the way the organization's going.
Collaborative?
It's starting to get collaborative.
I like that.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Which is great. And also, you have the National Archives now. There's a law that was passed just recently last year that requires all agencies, federal agencies that have UAP information to submit it to the National Archives. NARA.
This is the red flag. Another red flag with me is that he's total militarization that I hate. It's like private military contractors do not have any oversight. They don't have that oversight. Okay, they're exempt from some of the laws that ordinary military people, have to follow. They don't have to, have to go through the constitutional, judiciary, law and stuff like that military has to follow and adhere to. PMCs don't have to do all that. Okay? Not only that, but I see PMCs a threat to democracy. I see them as a huge threat to democracy because of the secrets and the power. They have armored vehicles, they have tanks, they have Cobra helicopters, they have actual military fighting vehicles and stuff like that. And that's a huge threat. And I don't think they should have all the power that they have. They have over 10,000 troops just in one state back east. I forgot what one, but just one of their bases there. And that is fucking insane.
Now think about that. Now we've got a single belly button, right? Unlike 9/11, where CIA and FBI and DOD all had their little pockets of information and nobody was sharing. Now you've got a central repository in law that says you will, CIA, FBI, DOD, and everybody else, DIA, NGA, NRO, you name it. If you've got UAP information, you will eventually submit it to NARA, to the National Archives, right? And there it shall stay. And so, and there's also downgrading instructions for classified information, so the American people will eventually be able to get access to it, right? So it's beginning to work. I know it's frustrating for a lot of people. That they want their disclosure now, damn it, and I get it.
Yeah.
But I've told people, look, disclosure is a process. It's not an event. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And we have come farther, I think, in the last 7 years than we have in the last 70 years. So it's working, and guess what? No one had to go to jail. I didn't have to go to jail for breaking my security oath. Congress is now engaged. You now have an organization, the executive branch. You now have, for example...
But some people have gone to jail for breaking that oath. Some people, that's 25 years. That's 25 years to life. Because they broke that oath. Or whatever.
Former President Donald Trump saying, for the record, if he were to get elected, he would actually consider releasing the UFO files, right? That's, holy smokes. You have a president saying that for the record just last week. So we've come so far in this conversation. And, I hate this conversation to be about personalities. There's an old saying that I'll say it in reverse, but, great minds think about ideas. Good minds, strong minds, think about things, and weak minds, think or talk about people. I think this topic is more important than any personality. Way more important than me. I'm just a mechanism to have the conversation. I always tell people, Lou, what do you think? Don't ask me that. Doesn't matter what I think. What matters...
Gotta be a made guy. Salam, right? Oh, God.
What you think the people, that's what matters. Our job, here's the data. You figure it out
They
what it
gotta
means
be
to you.
made guys,
And if it means
those,
nothing,
yeah,
great.
gotta be
You know,
made.
but at least you've had the opportunity to see it for yourself. The problem with this community that people call the UAP or UFO community, it's full of personalities that desperately seek attention. Whether they want to tear somebody down or they want to pretend that, you know, they're the next messiah. And that's dangerous to the conversation because that stigmatizes. That is the very reason why people in the past didn't really take this topic very seriously, because you had this weird collection of egos all vying for attention, trying to
They still do.
somehow stake
There
their
still
claim to
is,
being, you know, the one who has
Hey,
the
you
answer.
got the
when no-
government. That's why you have prophecies. You have not prophecies, but you have what I call cartel type stuff happening in videos that I've done, where not David Koresh, but another guy says some of these different contracting companies are willing to kill each other for these hard drives, for the information and intelligence that is on them. We have cartel wars going on with this. So, boy, his face doesn't look good right there, does it?
no one has.
But anyways, I just, I don't like this BS. Like I said, it's bullshit about how they always say national security. It is BS. Especially, like I said, China, Russia, they know about all this stuff. They got their own stuff. The only ones that they're keeping this stuff from is us, the people, the civilians. They don't want us to have it. Like you said, got to be a made guy, special, and have the badge and everything, if even that, So, anyways, anybody that watches, they like telling what you think. This is pretty much it. I think I need I got some appointments later on. So, peace out, everybody. Have a good morning, night, wherever you are, and take care.